Oh my goodness. You know that something is getting going when the party is literally getting started and I'm not even here yet. But it's a delight to see. Grail, Pottery, welcome back, my friends. Everyone else, welcome or welcome back to Tales of Praxis, a streaming and analytical article series by withtheterriblefate.com, your online volunteer publication source for everything to do with analyzing the storytelling of your favorite medium, video games, figuring out what makes them tick, why it's so special, why they impact us in the way that they do. In the case of Tales of Praxis, all and only to do with Bandai Namco's Tales JRPG series. Welcome, welcome, friends. So nice to have you. I'm Aaron Suduko, your host and the founder of With the Terrible Fate. I mean, just ease into this Wednesday night and listen to this music, right? We didn't get all the way through the sequence that we were playing last time, but the nice consequence of that is that we get to dive right back in with Velvet's theme. How about that? Nice way to set the mood, I think. I am excited. I mean, we left on a pretty big climactic reveal, which I think it was you, Grail, who called out as the fun sort of reveal where we already kind of understand where it's going because we know more about the world from Tales of Vesperia than the characters do here in Tales of Berseria at this point. But I think it's still something of a meaningful and interesting reveal to us as well because, like we spent some time talking about at the end of the last stream, we don't really understand yet how they're making sense of these concepts or how it's going to influence their further paths, and indeed whether these concepts are exactly the same way we took them to be in Zestiria. So I'm sure lots to come yet, and more to unfold as we set off in search of other Earth Pulses and Therians, but ultimately still in the somewhat opaque pursuit of revenge over Artorias. So it'll be fun to see where we go there. A couple pieces of housekeeping before we dive back in. If you are one of the fans of Tales of Praxis, who is also a Pokey fan, we had a new episode drop yesterday in Dan's podcast series, Pokemon Rose, in which he's doing something very similar to what I'm doing with the Tales games, except with the Pokemon games, who have loomed similarly large in his life since the time when he was a kid. This was an episode that I teased for you a couple weeks ago, where he's digging deep into his religious studies background to talk at length about the concept of mythopoeia, why it matters, why it's interesting in the real world, and how Pokemon uses exploration and game-based storytelling in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum to kind of create a mythopoeia for the world in a way that articulates sort of what's always been there and follows up on a lot of the storytelling mechanics, even around Mewtwo, going back all the way to Pokemon Red. So it's a very cool episode. It's about 15 minutes. Encourage you to give it a listen. It's a cool episode too, because I tweeted this. Listening to it, I felt like the episode was a little bit of a game and an interactive adventure because he's talking about like the mythopoeia, the esoteric origins of the world. And so it's very much of a piece with everything that we've been talking about in the last couple streams in terms of these characters uncovering through the deciphering of Laphicet's tome the mythic origins of their own world. And as we've seen there, as I talk about in my article on Tales of the Abyss, there's a lot of interpretive work in that kind of process in order to uncover like what it is the author is trying to say and how that connects up with our experience and understanding of the world. I think you can do something that is very fun and pretty strikingly similar with listening to Dan's most recent podcast. So if you are into Pokemon, I encourage you to tune in, and it's one of his longer episodes, actually. They tend to be more around like the 10, 12-minute mark. This one's a full 15 minutes and change. But I would say that for all he says, the greater half of the episode is in everything that he doesn't say, but kind of just shows through the form of the episode and the way in which it mirrors a lot of the mythopoeic content he's discussing. So I don't want to say any more than that. I don't want to give you too many tutorials or bits of guidance, but go into it and ask yourself, why is it that he made sort of the directorial and production decisions that he did? And I would say for basically any possible decision you could think of, there's an interesting kind of esoteric meaning that it's reinforcing in terms of how to think about the Pokemon games in this way. So that's my pitch for that. We're ramping up, obviously, still for our PAX panel, which is about JRPGs and Pokemon. So it's a good way to pregame that as well as we continue on our adventures through Pokemon and the Tales series. Grail, I feel you, but also from just listening to you throughout this adventure, I almost want to say that's been every point in this game for you. And again, I'll remind everyone who is not as familiar with Grail as Pottery and I, that Grail has absolutely put this upon himself because of the absurd challenge run he has put himself to. So I respect you, but it's like I don't even have a good comparison. If you spent your life designing the most insane escape room in the world, and then you wipe your memory and put yourself in it as like a joke or a challenge, and are then complaining about it. That's not a great analogy, but I think you see where I'm going with that. On the Tales end, besides diving back into Berseria, like I said, I started Fantasia a couple days ago. I think something that was really remarkable to me was I've played Fantasia before, but I had completely forgotten that it's a time travel story, despite the fact that like I wouldn't even consider that a spoiler because that's something that A, is built on the packaging of, this is a story that journeys through time and space, but also B, like the first time travel incident that is explicitly understood as such happens like inside of the first 90 minutes of playing the game. So I was kind of amazed at how thoroughly I'd forgotten something that is pretty distinctive for a Tales game. Again, as you all who are hanging out know, I haven't played all of the Tales games yet, but I would say from the lion's share of the ones that I have played, time travel is a very unusual feature. So I would have thought it would stick with me more. But then the more I was thinking about it and sitting back and reflecting before the stream, it was like I got this interesting feeling where I almost wanted to say maybe part of why I didn't remember it as distinctive in that way is because even though a lot of the other Tales games aren't explicitly time travel stories where the characters journey through time in a sci-fi or magical way, many of them kind of are time travel stories despite that. If you think about something like Symphonia or Abyss or Vesperia, or even kind of what we're starting to dive into in Berseria here, I think a lot of them are very self-consciously concerned with the characters excavating the past, understanding what actually happened in it, and then making choices in the present that are directly informed by sometimes their very intimate and direct relationship with the past in the way that creates like a radically different and new future for the world in a way that feels much more consonant with a lot of what time travel is concerned with than I kind of consciously processed before I stopped to think about this. But I think actually, like, if I consider what I want to get out of the average time travel story, I feel like many of the Tales games pull that off without a lot of the convolutions of actual time travel in a story where logic kind of has to bend to the will of that. So that was interesting for me to think about. Yeah, I think that's a fair description, Pottery. I mean, as with most time travel stories, you could kind of quibble about whether that's really time travel or what kind of time travel it is, but I know what you're talking about, of course. And yes, I think it's almost like self-consciously a pocket within the broader narrative, which is very different than what I too would call a time travel story, something like Fantasia or even Scarlet Nexus, which I've extolled the virtues of before and was also overseen by the same creative director as did Symphonia and Abyss. So it's definitely, if you're looking for a good time travel story, that is a great example of that. Well, Grail, seems like you have pushed yourself to your limits. Don't be afraid to take breaks, but all the better for you to come back and tell us how it's going and what you've learned at the end of the day from all of these adventures. Ha! Look at you. A nice little Fantasia Easter egg there. It is nice. I kind of wish that they opened the beginning credits of all the games with a little quote like that, because that is such a fun way to get grounded and situated in the world and story of Fantasia. Every time I sit down to play it. And for those who haven't played it, this isn't really a spoiler, but at the very beginning of the game, before the title screen, every time you boot it up, there's this great quote, actually from a character within the world that is something to the effect of, if there is evil in this world, then it lurks in the hearts of man, which is such a great way to set the tone. Well, there you go, Grail. If you treat it like that, pushing yourself to your limits for one final run through the game, I feel like, at least from what we've seen of Berseria so far, that's kind of thematically of a piece with a lot of the rest of the story, and a nice way to feel as if you really played the heck out of it before you put it down and go on to other things. I spent a lot of time also getting ready for this panel that we're going to be giving at PAX, so I put together some initial thoughts on Arise. I don't want to kind of give away the farm in terms of talking too much about what I'm thinking of. And I think I teased it a little bit during the last stream. So without going into like the nitty gritty of my outline or anything, I think what I'm latching onto is I think there's something really cool about the idea of, in a series that is so concerned with assigning blame for the way the world is, with someone like Mythos, or even Van, or various people, depending on whom you ask in Vesperia, or the Lord of Calamity in Zestiria. It's really interesting to me that Tales of Arise kind of almost pushes the problem back, where especially in the third act, it seems to present this interesting challenge to the idea of blaming someone for the way things are at all, where the way I'm reading and starting to think about the third act especially, but in a way that permeates the whole game, is this idea that kind of the lesson and the insight that is meant to be taken from like the Great Spirit at the end of the game, and especially the medium through which Rinwell conveys sort of the will and feeling, importantly the feeling of the Great Spirit, is that kind of the initial conditions of the universe itself were wrong, in such a way that it kind of doesn't make sense to assign blameworthiness to anyone, and that's intrinsically going to be myopic, exactly because like the overall context in which they're operating is just intrinsically unfair. And it's possible to correct that, but it requires two things, right? First, it requires being able to actually, govern yourself and decide to do things and act differently than those around you, which is a lot of what the first, and I guess also second, but especially the first act of Tales of Arise is about. But then secondly, it requires kind of being willing and able to act in a way that really disregards and frees you from the context of the past, in a way that I think even goes beyond what I talked about in my article in Tales of Symphonia, for instance, where, characters are able to process the past, but they do so by assigning a certain interpretation to it. I think Tales of Arise is more radical in the way it challenges you to let the past go so completely that you can allow the world to be otherwise, and recognize that sort of what you see as realities in the way the world is set up are only realities as long as you believe they are. And once you let it go, you can restructure the world in a way that actually was kind of really reminiscent to me of something like the end of Final Fantasy VII, or I guess you could even say Tales of the Abyss, where if you look at the ending of that, it's something that could very easily be misread as the party like failing to do what it is that they set out to do, or the villain getting away with what the villain wanted. But it ends up being, I would say, a happy ending. Not in spite of that, but a happy ending exactly because like the arc and philosophical dialogue of the game makes it the case that the characters are able to approach it from a different vantage point with a different perspective, and turn what might otherwise be framed or conceived of as a loss into something that actually charts a new way for the world. So I think that's really cool. I think it's been a useful way for me in distinguishing, especially like how is a game that is deeply structurally similar to Final Fantasy 16, almost at the end of the day, I would say, like, speaking to polar opposite ideas. That might be too strong, but the more I sat down to think about it, the more it felt like they were doing kind of antithetical things with very similar setups. Because I also didn't realize how similar they were until I sat down and said, like, okay, Aaron, let's list out all the points of comparison. And there are a lot, but for all that, I think they're very different games, and I think that this way of situating them within their particular series in order to bring that out is a really good way into understanding them on their own terms, which is exactly what this part of the lecture is going to be about. So it's a bit of a longer tangent than I had planned, but hopefully that's enough to get your appetites going and make you a little eager for what we'll be doing at PAX West. Hopefully there'll be a lot of good fans in attendance who want to chat about it, but also I have gone out of the way in the last few days to make sure that my remote audio visual setup is good to go, and there aren't going to be any issues with that. So got the camcorder, got the tripod, got a fresh SD card, all the good stuff. So hopefully, knock on wood, cross your fingers and toes, we'll be able to get a nice clean recording of it, which can then go up online, and we can chat about that as well as a real life JRPG party. So that's what I got for you, my dear friends. I'll catch up on your messages real quick, and then let's dive back into Velvet's theme and some Tales of Berseria here. Yeah, Pottery and Grail. This is actually something that I marveled at getting back into Tales of Fantasia, because I also assumed they were quoting someone in the real world. And then I looked it up and I saw it was just from a character in Tales of Fantasia. And my reaction was almost like, oh man, they got me. Like they tricked me. Because I feel like there's a sense in which it is supposed to be taken to be like a quote from the real world. And I think that's something that's kind of interesting and subversive in itself. A lot of great authors from across time, especially in sort of modernist and postmodernist work, play with stuff like that. Like some of my favorite stories by the Argentinian writer, the late great Jorge Luis Borges, are like fictional literary reviews by a literary critic who is itself just a character, no one in the real world, reviewing a book by an author where the book is also fiction and the author's a work of fiction. So there are like 3 or 4 different levels of the fiction, and it's hard to tell where reality ends and the fiction begins, which is kind of the point. So it was fun to see it playing with that kind of stuff. For obvious reasons, based on what I just said, Pottery, House of Leaves is one that's definitely on my list. I have not actually made that particular journey in my literary adventures yet, but who knows? This may be as good a reason as any to dive in and do that. Yes, Grail, we will definitely get all of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and probably mostly the ugly of your gameplay once we make a bit more progress in the stream here. I had it on my desk for a while. I don't have it anymore, Pottery, but if you weren't on the stream when we were chatting about it, I don't think you were. Another great example of literature like that I think kind of even goes further in playing with the boundary between fiction and reality is Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler. Great book, super kind of high-minded and theoretical in terms of just its approach to storytelling as literature and as literature that thinks about literature, but also deeply moving, super emotional, a lot of pathos. It makes you feel for all of the intellectualism in it. And it's If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler by Italo Calvino. And literally, if I remember correctly, the first line in the book is, you are sitting down to read Italo Calvino's latest novel, If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler. So super meta right away in a very rewarding way. Many very rewarding ways, actually. Yeah. So there, you have reinforced and probably pushed up on my list one that's been on my list for probably over a decade at this point. I really have no excuse, and it sounds like maybe I gave a new one for your list as well. So cheers to that. All right, I think we have talked Pokemon and JRPGs and tales and meta-fictional literature to death at the start of this stream, which is a great way to kick off a Wednesday. All very much in our wheelhouse, as I know you all know at this point. Welcome back to the stream, my friends. Let's do some Tales of Berseria. This is Tales of Praxis. We were so diligent in cutting this off. I think we don't even know what our next destination is, besides hunting down the Therians.
So I rescued this poacher who'd run away from one of those Class 4 islands.
Ah, yes, that's something on our list still, too. The Cat 4 Islands.
Chef to go hunt a rare wolf on the island. But she didn't see a single blasted critter on that island, let alone any rare wolf. Place was empty.
Then why did she run away?
That's the perennial challenge, Padre. Always too many good stories to engage with and not enough time, right? Especially when we love stories that are as long and involved as JRPGs. They have a way of eating away a lot of our time, I've found.
Out of there as quick as she could, but her ship sunk soon as she hit open water.
Sounds like whatever's there is as smart and manipulative as it is vicious.
Sounds like. Later I heard some talk about how several exorcists had gotten killed on that island. If you plan on...
Oh, fucking hell. I forgot that literally tomorrow is the release of the new Armored Core. Ugh. Why is this year burying me in so many great games? I still haven't had a chance to sit down and play the new Amnesia yet, either. Jeez. This specifically reminds me of when Dan reminded me, I think less than 24 hours before the launch of Final Fantasy XVI, that it was finally coming out. You hear about these things discussed for literally years, and you get so used to them being an impending reality as opposed to something that actually exists. So it, at least for me, it always catches me off guard when they actually are birthed into the real world. And even though I've had so much time to get ready, that kind of makes it harder for me to get ready when all is said and done.
Sir, we just received a Sylph J from the boss of the Bloodwings. She has a job for us and wants us to meet her in Loegres. How should we respond?
Let's do it. Besides, we need to see if that demon in the villa was actually a Therian.
Good point. And the Bloodwings might know something about the other.
Wow, that's a hefty price point for a collector's edition. Jesus. What does it come with?
Ready anytime.
Well, if we're all talking reading lists, now I have to ask both of you, Pottery and Grail, what your next things that you're reading are. If you just got new books, Pottery, and if you have a couple books that are on your shelf, Grail, you haven't really gotten into yet. Ah, yes, of course, stuff. I hear stuff can command a high market value. All right. Back to Loegres. The seat of the Abbey.
I lost my mother to a demon. Yet that girl's a Therian. I don't even know what I want anymore.
Hey, that's pretty. You like to look at that thing, don't you?
Yes, my mother... Someone very important to me gave me this. I treasure it a lot. Looking at it gives me strength. Do you want to see it?
Yeah! Ah! What's wrong?
So it is similar to the comb.
My face! It's scary!
Oh, that's such a sad thought.
I don't want to look like that! I don't want my mommy to hate me!
The first time a demon sees its new face.
Mommy! Mommy!
When I was her age, that's just how I cried. Kamoana, I want you to see this.
That huge owie. What happened?
It's big and ugly, isn't it? There are scary things about my body, too. But, do you think I'm scary, Kamoana?
No, not at all. But are you all right? Does that hurt?
Thanks, sweetie. I'm alright, I promise.
What about me? Do you think I'm scary?
You're such a sweetheart, Kamoana. Nobody could ever be scared of you. Not me, not your mother, not Laphicet. You don't have to cry anymore. It'll be okay. I promise.
Okay. That scar, was it from a demon?
Yeah. They attacked my village when I was a girl. I was so hurt, I couldn't move. But my mother lured them away from me so I could survive.
What happened to her?
The last thing she said to me was, "Stay strong and keep living."
Mm.
Come to the deck. Grimoire says she's learned something from the book. Hey, why's your face so red? It's nothing. Somehow, I doubt that.
It's nothing, I swear.
So, speaking of books, before we get too far off the book topic, love all of this color to what y'all are reading. He Who Drowned the World and She Who Became the Sun, definitely ones that I've heard of, Pottery, but I don't know if I could tell you that's what it was about. That sounds super interesting. I might have to add those to my list too. And the Book of Days, Grail, yeah, I feel like that's one of those like old school, like mythological religious texts that you hear about every now and then, but never actually sit down and read, or for myself at least, because that name rings a bell, but I've never read it. That is really interesting, though. It honestly ties in with some of the mythopoeia and esotericism that we've been talking about over the last couple streams, in the sense that, as you say, when there's sort of a holiday or a like religious or symbolic attachment to every single day of the year, then it really is kind of like taking that belief system and making a very fine-grained schema for like articulating our entire concept of like time and passage through the world through it, because like on any given day there's a particular meaning ascribed to it. I guess that's maybe similar to what some people get from like astrology and numerology and other sort of, I guess you could call them esoteric practices like that as well, where things like, the stars or numbers coordinate our place and trajectory in the world at any given moment. That's a really interesting little anecdote right there, Pottery. The fact that you are reading a book based on a character in another book recommending it. Talk about metafictional, right? I don't know that I've ever heard of that, but that is so dang cool. You'll have to, if and when you do end up reading it, and we're still doing Tales of Praxis, I hope you let us know how you find that, not only in terms of whether or not you like that book, Travel Light, but also in terms of whether the book like represents and speaks to the character that recommended it in the way you'd expect, or if it like sheds new light on the character. That's so interesting to think about in light of all of the kind of literary analytic considerations that we've been digging into on the stream.
Do you all remember the second verse of that song Laphicet read earlier?
Vividly.
Four Empyreans may tear him asunder, but so long as there is one receptive to divine power, Therian shall be forever reborn in sight of the full crimson moon.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. That sounds like a fun adventure.
That's what I've gathered you all here to discuss. And we think that passage means that Innominat and the Therians will be revived by a chosen one, right? Yes, but the shall be forever reborn part kept bothering me. I've reconsidered my analysis. Suppose that instead of someone being chosen by Innominat to create Therians...
I'll have to add that to my list too, Padre. I haven't heard of that one. What's it about?
The song means that Innominat chooses who becomes Therians. But so long as there is one receptive to divine power, Therians shall be forever reborn. What do you think that could mean? That someone receptive to Innominat's power will be reborn as a Therian.
Like Kamoana.
Which is to say that the Abbey figured out how to turn people into Therians, and then got right to work.
That's...
Are you really that surprised? Artorias has always been one to prioritize the many over the individual, as I well know. Another thing to consider is this wording about Therians being forever reborn. This could mean that one Therian will be reborn again and again, or it could mean that different Therians will be born to take their place. Meaning that even if you kill one, there are more waiting in line. They can't be wiped out.
Looks like prioritizing the one over the many was the right
Wow,
call
that
this
sounds like a
time.
very interesting plot, Pottery.
I never
I'll have to
said I
check that
wouldn't
out.
kill her, if it would prevent Innominat's reawakening. But Therians can't be killed. Not truly.
So, in a nutshell, if you kill one, another person who's receptive to Innominat's power will be reborn as one.
Right. But the song says that 7 mouths feed the body. So there's only so many around.
If you don't kill them, the next ones won't be born.
Exactly. So we remove the 7 Therians from their Earth Pulse points instead. But then, we also have to protect them so the Abbey doesn't steal them back. Or kill them.
That's what I was saying last stream.
Sounds tricky. We've got to protect my bug, too.
Yeah, you take real good care of that thing now. Got it?
You bet I will.
In that case, we should probably work on securing a proper hideout for ourselves. You got a secret base or anything, Eisen?
It's every man's fantasy, but sadly,
It really
Hard to
is.
find spot. One where we can guarantee a steady supply of malevolence for the Therians.
Somewhere devoid of people but full of malevolence. Real poser you got there. With the Abbey in control of the entire continent, finding a place like that will be easier said than done.
Meanwhile, Inominat's reawakening draws ever closer. We'll have to keep collecting our Therians while we search for a hideout. For now, let's just get to Loegres.
So we have 3 of the 7 so far, right? Can I count? Because presumably Velvet counts as one of them, although I don't think they've explicitly said that yet. And then we have the Stag Beetle, and we have Kamoana. And we know about the one that the Abbey has bound in the Abbey. So we know about 4 of the 7.
I was drifting out at
I
sea
think.
for 3 days. Almost died out there. Poor you. You probably deserved it. Say that again, wise ass. I dare ya.
Shut up, both of you. No one's getting anything until you pay me what you owe first.
The continent that Loegres is on, right? Isn't that the one under discussion? I forget the name of it, but where we are now, right?
Are they gonna be okay?
Yeah, good looking out,
Don't
Baudry.
pay
I
them any
appreciate
mind.
that.
Sailors are just a short-tempered bunch, that's all.
Huh? The hell are you doing?
What's going on?
They've jacked up the price to dock our ship here.
Oh yeah? Some real balls you've got there, buddy.
If you lot want to moor here, that's the price you're gonna pay. Look, pirates are a liability to begin with, but calling your crew infamous these days would be putting it lightly.
Their reputation
The more
precedes
wanted
them.
you are, the more it's gonna cost to hide you. Capiche?
Hard to argue there. Benwick, just pay the man what he wants.
Midgand, I think that's the name of the continent.
You're such pushovers.
Because it's in the middle.
Happen both.
I knew I could count on you to come through, Eisen. Pleasure doing business with you.
Looks like I'm causing you trouble.
It comes with the job. Don't sweat it. Some sailors just have longer tempers than others.
Noted.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it does kind of raise an interesting question at this point in the story, right? Because if they're hemming and hawing about the difficulty of finding a place that has a lot of malevolence but no people, I mean, we haven't been there yet because they're optional places, but aren't all of the Category 4 islands, by definition, that kind of place? Like, they're teeming with malevolence, but they're not populated by anyone, and so the Abbey just leaves them alone? Maybe that'll be the ultimate solution they find, but that is interesting that it wouldn't occur to them at this point. If we stop and think about it for all of 2 seconds.
All right, everything's all fixed up. Now to polish this ship from top to bottom.
You really throw your back into your work, don't you?
Why shouldn't I? The Von Eltia is our pride and joy, our weapon. And most importantly, our home.
I'm sure you've heard this before, but she's one odd-looking ship.
The Von Eltia was built by the Kingdom 12 years ago, using the very best technology available. She was designed for search and seizure operations on the high seas. Apparently, her unusual design comes from an engineer who is familiar with technology from the far continent.
But on her maiden voyage, a string of mysterious accidents took the lives of the captain, then the second, and then the third in command. People thought the ship was bad luck. She was about to be scrapped when Captain Eifried came and snatched her for himself.
If the ship was bad luck, why did Eifried want it?
Well, I'm sure part of it was that he wanted a sturdy
Two
ship
people,
capable
yeah.
of
I had
reaching
the same thought.
continent. But when I asked him why, he said,
I think it may be the same VA doing different voices,
Too
which
interesting if you ask
might be
me.
part of why we both had that
Chased by
reaction.
storms, struck by icebergs, attacked by a giant whale. You name it.
3 years ago when the first mate arrived, it all made sense. To think we'd been haunted by a Reaper the whole time.
Oh, come on. Don't go blaming the captain and the first mate for every bad thing that happens. I bet you're all just frustrated because you're forced to go where they tell you.
None of us are forced to be here. We're here because we choose to be here. And we do so fully knowing what sort of men the captain and the first mate are.
Anyone can leave the crew whenever they like. We're free pirates, each of us, here because we want to be. Some of us love adventure, some are looking to test their fate, and some are just searching for a good place to die. We're a ragtag bunch of rogues, that's for sure. But not a one of us has died carrying regret or resentment.
So we're glad to help out you and yours. But you'd best not forget what we stand for.
I won't.
They're quite the crew, aren't they?
Were all those accidents truly caused by your power?
Yeah. I've been searching far and wide for a way to lift the Reaper's curse. But when I couldn't find a single thread to follow on this continent, I turned my eyes to the other side of the ocean.
And that's why you boarded this ship.
And a fine ship she is. The Von Eltia was built from 1,000-year-old wood, you know. Before I found my coin, she was my vessel. But then the accidents came.
And then Ifrid stole the ship. Did he know you were on board?
Definitely. He had pretty solid resonance going for him. Although at first, I think he assumed I was just a dour-eyed lubber worthy of little notice.
I suppose being a Reaper tends to take its toll like that.
No argument there. But still, whether they could see me or not, they didn't act any differently at all. I fought my damn curse with everything I had. And Ifrid and his crew fought right along with me. Hell, we even finally made it to the far continent.
And you didn't find anything there? To help with your curse?
I didn't even look.
But that's why you went there, isn't it?
Eventually, I just got tired of fighting back. The crew, they taught me how to feel alive. And the joy of pursuing my dreams alongside good friends.
It's also okay to, like, give up on the challenge run at some point, I think, Grail. At some point, it's also important to be good to yourself. I really love that little window into just the pirate code and what brings the pirates together. And I think the thing that really struck me with the way they were talking about Eisen and the pirate's curse was, on the one hand, one, of course, is inclined to think that, yeah, it's a bad thing to have this curse over you that always makes you unlucky and makes these crazy things happen. But then, on the other hand, I almost feel as if there's a sense in which, like, to a pirate who's most interested in just marching to the beat of his own drum and living his life free from everyone else in a world that is so restrictive and oppressive and authoritarian, especially in the wake of the Abbey, there's an interesting sense in which, like, teaming up and allying with your, you know, between yourself and someone who creates this kind of almost like a force field of bad luck almost also gives you a sense of immunity to the influence of those outside parties like the Abbey who would control you, because not even they have the ability to change or impact the Reaper's curse. And the curse therefore kind of shields you from them. So I feel like there's an interesting sense that's subversive in the same way that a lot of the other themes of the party that we're seeing here point to, where that kind of bad luck is the exact kind of thing to empower these misfits who are looking for their place and course in the world.
When are we going to be allowed free access through Vortigern? Having to go all the way around it every time is far too inconvenient.
Something like that, but almost, I don't know if it's more honest or even further intense sophistry, maybe a little bit of both, but the idea that it's not as if you're thinking your odds are going to get better for all of the coin tosses you've lost. You still get that they're going to be bad coin tosses, but there's something about, like, feeling like you're being in control of your own destiny simply because, like, you're making it the case that you're always going to be unlucky, and so your life just becomes defined by sort of charting your course within that context of unluckiness. Like someone who feels as if, like, oh, you know, the world is being unkind to me and, like, you know, forcing me into this story or narrative where I don't belong. So I'm just going to, like, this is a bad example, but like live in a casino and leave it all to chance, even if it's somewhere that the house always wins, because at least it's like it's somewhat stochastically based or a different system that is beyond the purview of the other parties who are trying to influence me in this world. Oh, oh, Grail, if I totally misread your comment, I apologize. But I think that's telling because my thesis on these last few streams especially has been maybe Grail is just slowly embodying all the themes of the game. So that would really just be the cherry on that particular sundae, wouldn't it?
They insist on building a big gate over the sea. The least they can do is let honest folk through it.
I get why you're upset, but maybe they just haven't been able to devote the resources to fix it after those savage demons wrecked the place. Look, those demons who attacked Helaves are still on the loose, aren't they?
Yep. Standing right here.
From what I heard, the demons who wrecked Vortigern were the same ones that killed the High Priest.
What? No way. Wait a minute. The High Priest was killed?
Yeah. The official story is that he's injured or sick or something, but I heard differently.
Then no wonder they haven't had time for Vortigern.
Yeah, I feel that deeply.
Quick. Those monsters need to pay for what they did.
Looks like our infamy is growing by the day.
Maybe they've even put a bounty on us by now.
They keep embellishing our escapades, though. I'm honestly a little hurt they're calling us monsters.
The more they embellish, the easier it is for us to get around. Confusion and panic will only help us.
Revel in the chaos, Reaper's curse, etc. Oh yeah, your message above sunk cost fallacy made clear that you were talking about your playthrough, Grail. I just totally missed that message. Oh, it is not my day for managing the chat. Yes, I do definitely get the feeling of being in too deep. I gave you that advice in a very do as I say, not as I do way, because I am the lord of bullying myself through runs that I have no business doing. That's how I platinumed Sekiro, among similar enterprises in my gaming life. It happens to the best of us, and it happens to me too. Please, sir. Just a single solitary inskit? Oh, there is a conversation in here at least, so I guess if we don't get an inskit, we'll still get something. That does not make me feel better, Grail. That makes me feel 10 times worse.
I heard that the merchants in Port Reed.
Please, Grail, stop punishing yourself, said the Alicia to the chat's regal.
Are making a killing now that the sea gate is shut tight.
No. Nothing compared to a merchant like you.
There are people profiting from this?
What are you talking about? Anyone who wants to head to North Gan has to sail around West Gan now. And those ships need to put into Port Reed for supplies.
That is true. Still, it's only until Vortigern is repaired.
Your friends in Reneed wouldn't happen to be paying off the Abbey to delay repairs, would they?
You think that'd work on the Abbey? They're not as lax as the church was.
So that's it. You're in cahoots with the church.
Hey, relax. I'm just saying, there's a lot of nasty rumors circulating about those priests.
So not everyone's been hurt by Vortigern's closure. Interesting.
There's a front and back to every coin.
Except your coin only ever turns up tails.
Pottery, maybe I'm in the minority here, but I was in the exact same position in terms of needing to grind out for the skill trophy, but I found that so cathartic and kind of healing and satisfying after all of the skill checks and punishment in the rest of Sekiro to be able to just kind of turn my brain off and mindlessly hunt down enemies for like a couple hours. It felt like a nice little mild dessert course after the rest of the meal that was Sekiro. Where's the shop? Oh, there it is. You still have to be in the mood, though. I appreciate that. I'm not going to deal with equipment right now. We'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. Underworld connections. This I gotta see.
Bloodwing butterflies operate in the Empire's shadows. Not even the Abbey knows their full scope beyond whispers and rumor. And you all have a connection to them, don't you? Dark and interconnected is the underworld. We've heard voices in the shadows, glimpsed faces behind paper-thin masks.
And also just had normal conversations with them.
Gideon. Was that at their behest?
Yeah, the Bloodwings asked us to take him out.
We did it in exchange for information that could lead us to Artorias.
Information? You would assassinate a man for mere information?
Almost definitely.
Yes. Information on the shepherd who rules the world. Not a bad deal if you ask me.
We just work with them when our interests align. Nothing more.
That's the kind of thin justification I'd expect to hear from them, too.
But the Bloodwings were acting upon knowledge that the High Priest was harming the people of the city.
You're right. The incident with the nectar was the church's failing. And it seems that the Bloodwing Butterfly Network goes further and deeper than we had thought.
They knew about the barrier at the throne, too.
And Velvet's expertise at dove mimicry.
Could you stop bringing that up?
Dove mimicry? What does that mean?
I have no idea.
Do a reprise. Do a reprise.
That's all.
Huh? Right! It was a black, full-chested dove, wasn't it? Cuckoo! A black, full-chested dove? Is that some sort of underworld code word?
Yes. All right, back to Loegres. On the one hand, I really don't feel as though we've been playing it for that long. On the other hand, to be going back to Loegres really feels like a homecoming after a lot of self-discovery in the party and plot that has happened since the last time we were here.
Here we are, back in Loegres. It was a lot tougher to get in the first time.
More funny than tough, if you ask me.
Oh, you mean Velvet's little dove act?
Coo, coo.
More skits about the Dove Act. More skits about the Dove Act.
Oh, don't act like you didn't enjoy it too. I'm sure you did, right? Good little boys don't lie to adults, you know.
I might have. Just a little.
Say it like a dove.
It was funny. Coo, coo.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it, Grail. It's just a touchstone and landmark in the world, like going back to Dawngrest and Vesperia, or Tokyo doesn't feel quite the same way in Symphonia, since it's the center of the second world you find as opposed to the first. Maybe Doth. I get the same feeling from Doth in Abyss, which also speaks to the point that Pottery made a while ago about Doth and Dawngrest being suspiciously similar. Okay, so, I mean, you can't say that and then not tell us what a no friends nor fun run is, so please elaborate. Yeah, Pottery, the stream is clearly proving your point. I love it when a point comes together like that. You couldn't plan that if you tried, but it just happens.
Is Nominat's book so difficult? Grimoire seemed perplexed by it.
Yeah, she said it was written in ancient Avarost, a language that uses Impressionist script.
I've never heard of Impressionist script.
Each character can have many different meanings and readings, depending on the emotion it's expressing and the way it relates to the characters around it. Some
like
latest records
Hebrew.
on its grammar and structure survive, but none that say how to read the emotion the characters express. Grimoire said that you have to recreate the writer's feelings as a sort of starting point in order to read it.
I see. And you have a talent for that sort of thing?
I guess I do.
But a script based on
I would say
emotions,
Halor, no doubt about
that's
that.
as far removed from modern language as can be.
Yeah, it's completely unrelated apparently.
How can it be completely unrelated?
After the temperance of Avarost, the entirety of human civilization vanished. The language went with it.
Much as a blooming flower loses its petals. The Avarost civilization grew too far and came to its final end.
That sounds
The surviving
familiar.
buildings and ancient tools, the likes of which our technology cannot replicate, were the beginning of that end.
In any case, it sounds like deciphering that writing will take quite a while.
I swear I'll stop harping on this, at least until the next time they bring it up, but that is like, that could easily have been, like, text that was lifted from the writings and research that I dug up when I was doing like all of the background for the like exegetical and esoteric interpretation of Tales of the Abyss in line with Jewish mysticism. Like that is exactly how like scholars talk about Bible exegesis that like actual Jewish mystics do. So super interesting to see how deep this game went in it in a way that was totally, well, not totally different, but formally different than what Tales of the Abyss did with it.
I'm ready for this.
We had talked about me maining another character now. Rogro! Yeah, the Capitol, another very memorable soundtrack. I really did. I had such a stronger sense of nostalgia walking into basically every city in Vesperia than I had expected to. I don't know if that's just something about the quality of the soundtrack or the number of hours I spent in it the first time around. I would have to dig up my 360 to know that number, but they were much more deeply embedded in my brain than I had realized, which was great. I totally turned around on the field. But hey, at least I figured it out then. Oh, can we jump? Oh, we can jump! Alright, I'm gonna do that. Maybe I should save it, though. We only have 2 enough bottles. But we can buy them now. It's fine. Let's just get to the other end of the map. I had enough nostalgia for being back on this continent. We made our nostalgia point. And we're back.
Man, the capital sure is big.
Yeah, with historical buildings and artisans and all, there's much of interest here for a boy who loves to learn.
Uh-huh.
Sightseeing's nice and all, but don't wander off and get lost.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Don't worry about him. He can take care of himself.
I know, I was just saying.
The ceaseless battle for the title of Lafayette's surrogate mommy / older sister wages ever onward.
You look like travelers. I have some good news for you. The restrictions on travel to the Aldina Plains are going to be lifted soon. The road's opening back up.
So, that's the latest
I
word
smell
on
our
the
next
street.
adventure.
I see what you did there.
I try to liven things up around here.
Well, ever since Lord Artorias became the shepherd, demon attacks have gone down.
Look, it's good as a working thesis at least, Padre. I mean, I don't have really any better suggestions at the moment.
The demons who nearly destroyed Helives are still skipping about on the loose, though.
What?
And just the other day, a village near Salt was destroyed by the demon blight. Guess the capital doesn't mind, though.
What?
Don't worry about it. Your shepherd and the abbey are going to save the world, right?
Listening to you has kind of gotten me all nervous again. If you hear any other scary stories, let me know, please.
With pleasure.
Not that one with fresh blood, melted bodies. Oh, maybe that tale about the demon doll that comes alive.
If you're going to waste time, we're leaving you here.
Well, that's enough of this detour then. Sorry to be such a drag.
Wait! That doll one sounded really cool!
I just really want good stories, dude, please. Youth is me in real life. Grail, that sounds even more complicated and exhausting than what you're doing in Berseria. But it's more fun to you somehow, is what you're saying? Or it's just more fun purely because the underlying game is more fun to you?
What's with this crowd?
Modulu's troupe just put on a real show.
Wait.
It was the best.
What are you guys talking about?
Every bit as great as I'd heard.
Wow, the Modulu? Surely you mean Mogilu. Has my time to bask in fame finally come at long last?
No, we're talking about Modulu, not Mogilu.
Shut the fuck up, Magulu!
You know, Lulu, the famous dancer? She actually goes by the majestic Lulu, but everyone calls her Modulu.
Fair enough, Grail. Fair enough.
Just watching the beauty of her dance, you can't help but feel like maybe everything's gonna turn out okay in the world.
I guess spinning a wheel sounds fun. Any opportunity to spin a real wheel.
Rip-off! She's just trying to pass off as Magulu's menagerie and profit from our good name!
What good name? We don't actually perform anything.
Come on, Velvet, you did that sick dove impression.
I was planning on getting started eventually, but now this con artist comes along and ruins everything! I can't just
Curses. An obstacle. Now I'm not going to get anything done today.
It's Modulu! You did great today, Modulu. I loved it.
Thank you so much. But according to my
Speaking
teacher,
of,
I
what
still
are the
have
people
one
in
more
Tales of
job.
Berseria
I'll
wearing?
work hard to do better next time, so I hope you'll come see me.
Modulu's teacher is a dancer named Balta, whose immense talent brought him all the fame in the world. But Balta suffered a tragic injury that took him forever from the stage, and now Modulu was working hard to carry on his dream.
So, you're Modulu then?
I am. My teacher and I work really hard to put on performances that'll leave a lasting impact. And I refuse to let anyone call me a phony.
Oh? And how do you propose to stop me? Taking it to the stage and seeing which one of us can better hold a crowd?
I mean, yeah, I'd be down for that.
Yes, that's just what I was hoping.
Yes!
Don't go around picking petty fights.
Entertainment off.
But sir, this woman, she...
You should know better. If you have the energy to spare spitting vitriol at people, you should refocus that anger into moving your body. If you need to express yourself, do it on the stage.
Vandastelka Grants would like to know your location.
Yes, sir. You're right. Teacher, is the pain acting up again?
It's no matter. What does pain compare to losing the ability to dance? Anyway, what matters is how you're holding up.
I mean, I kind of wish more people would say that.
Fine, sir.
World might be a better
Let's
place.
head back and practice some more.
But Pottery, be real. Twitter no longer exists. It is X, the Alpha and the Omega.
He seems strict.
Everyone is Xehanort.
He does. But keep in mind that Balta recognized her talent at a young age. He even adopted her so he could pass on everything he knew. He might be strict, but only because he believes in her.
You sure know.
They finally phased the tweeting and retweeting language out of the app. Now it's all just posts.
You could say.
But I'm with you. I'm never going to change my vernacular.
A teacher and his student, chasing after the same dream. What a sweet little story they
I'm
are.
hoping, I mean, I'm sure this will never happen because they would litigate it out of existence, but I wish there were like a third-party app where it just plugged into your Twitter account and all the information was the same, but they edited like the logo and the name and everything to actually be what the company is, as opposed to Elon's silliness. That is a third-party app I would use. That thing also works. That wretched object.
That's why I think it's high time for Magilu's Menagerie to put on a show. And for our act, we'll be a comedy duo. Comedy? Where'd you
Grail,
get
I'm
that
sensing
from?
you're mad
You
about
heard
Berseria still.
the little Modulu, right?
But I take your
But
point.
not one of you knows a single acrobatic trick.
Sorry.
Don't apologize. You couldn't have seen this coming. Well, you could act like you feel a little bad at least. Now, normally I'd make you guys do something flashy like jump through a ring of fire, but I'll be magnanimous and let you do comedy instead. With comedy, I can take control of the stage and keep things lively. I can feed you the audience on a platter. But going on the same stage as Modulu, it's too much to handle. Oh, I can't wait to take her down a peg or two.
I'm out. I don't even know why you're bothering. It's hopeless.
It's not hopeless. Plus, if we do well, we'll be raking in the dough. What better opportunity do we have to get started than now? After all, people will come thinking we're Majulu's troupe.
You're sure eager to profit.
Would you
off
say
the
you're
company.
indignant, Grail?
Material I want.
Ready to
Keep
cast some
throwing out such
indignation?
figures And the audience will be in stitches.
I'm not sure I follow, but okay.
The only thing getting thrown out
There you
is
go.
kind of
Find a
you.
silver lining.
You know, I think you could pull off being the straight man in our act.
What? Keep your compliments to yourself.
This plan might sound dumb, but more money never hurts.
Eisen, not you too.
Then it's settled. Now we just need to book ourselves a few gigs. I've got an in with all the stage directors in town. For now, I think everyone should pair up so we can figure out just what sort of comedy chops you all have.
Everybody?
Even me?
Certainly. Each one of you is a part of Magilou's menagerie, after all.
It's amazing and like vaguely interesting to me that this whole thing is part of the main plot as opposed to a side quest. It feels like such the right content to be like a diversion or like end game joke. And the fact that it's baked right into the main story is like at least funny, at most maybe an interesting way into the ways the game is different than the others across a few dimensions.
I'm not so sure about this.
This is sort of a spoiler for Tales of Arise, but I think I can say it with enough lack of context where if you've played Arise, you'll still get it, and if you haven't, you won't really get the significance. But anyway, warning. But since you say indignation, Grail, I will say one of my favorite moments of like found organic storytelling, not in my replay of Tales of Arise, but back when it first came out, was, you know, I was playing on hard and it was my first run through the game, and it was a challenging time for me, a mere mortal, as opposed to someone with Grail's propensity for just murdering the game with video game skills. So I was chugging through with the party, and we were working through the storyline with Law and Rinwell in Cislodia is the continent, right? And Cisloden, the capital, or switch it, reverse it. Anyway, so we got to the confrontation with the Lord, Ganabelt, whose favorite anything is indignation. And over the course of the fight, he had managed to kill off the entire party except for Law. So we've whittled him down to almost the end of his health. The only one still alive is Law. I'm out of items. I can't revive anyone, so I have to take control of Law. And as Ganabelt is in the middle of getting ready to cast Indignation, I just get Law to punch him literally to death and take him down. And in the context of like what Ganabelt means to Law and what it is that he's trying to overcome at that point in the story, that was like such an impactful moment to me in a way that I hadn't even really expected it would be. So Grail, way back when you asked me about Law, I really do think part of one of the main reasons that I've always been really up on him and engaged with him as a character was just that happy accident of the way that fight went. It really left an impression on me. Yeah, it's a cool fight, isn't it, Padre? Yeah, I'm glad you appreciate it too. They did a lot of cool things with the combat in that game, I feel like, especially the main fights, and really interesting ways to add a lot of cinematics to them without reducing them to purely cinematic fights or using quick time events or things like that. They had a really cool flow to them, I think. Shut up, Grail. We're going to put you in timeout. The other thing that was funny to me about Magilou and Magilou, just before we lose the thread of that storyline, was it's something you see in a number of the games, this trope of the main party being impersonated in various instances. Like you have the whole fake party of the Chosen that you run across in Palmacosta that makes trouble for the party getting the Spiritua statue, I think, or the Tome of Spiritua in Tales of Symphonia. So for Berseria, a game that kind of inverts a lot of what you expect from its party in terms of the heroes being questionable heroes or maybe even anti-heroes, to also relegate that copycat plot to Magilou, the kind of sideshow comedic character who is sort of most out of place with the group to begin with, is, I feel like, very in keeping with a lot of the other ways in which Berseria is playing with the tropes of the Tales games storytelling.
Whenever I hear Magilou's name, I can't help but think of Magilanica.
Magilanica?
Yeah, very cool set pieces, Grail. I would agree with that.
Worked as part of the freak show. Talk to spirits nobody else could see.
That's her, all right. She had many mysterious powers, like moving things without touching them and divining where people would find lost objects. For a time, people called her the Little Witch. She was pretty popular.
Thanks to her, the rest of the troop took in plenty of cash. Or so I hear.
Yeah, but eventually they took it too far, and the kingdom tried them for heresy. I hear Mogilanica was subjected to really brutal torture.
True fact. Everyone knows this story.
Well, I've never heard it.
That's not too surprising. It all took place when I was a young woman myself.
Remind me, Magilu. How old are you again?
That's what I was gonna
How
ask.
old would you say I am?
Well, from your reaction, I can at least tell you're not my age.
Old enough. Just tell us who you are, Magilu. Don't make NPCs tell us. It is pretty amazing and telling how far we've gotten in the story, knowing really next to nothing about Magilu. It says a lot about her character, of course, but even in the corpus of Tales games, I feel like most of the time, by this deep into the second act, you're going to have a passing understanding of all the party characters' backgrounds and why it is that they're there and what it is they're fighting for. And we do have, I would say, that amount of background on everyone else, but Magilu, I don't know. Girl's a bit of a wild card. A joker.
High priest returned to us.
Keep this between us, but I heard Lord Gideon was killed.
That's a good working theory, Grail. Something to go
It
on.
most certainly is true. Hey, shh, they'll hear you.
I know someone who works in the palace, and he said the demon was a girl with the head of a wolf and the body of a gorilla.
Absolutely.
How could a demon have gotten into the palace?
Apparently, there was a power struggle among the higher-ups, and Gideon's enemies snuck the demon into his villa. They say that's why people sometimes heard terrifying screams coming from the place.
Oh, is the demon still there?
No idea. Rumor says she escaped, but I wouldn't worry. There's no way she'd stick around here.
That's what you think. She's right here, so you'd better watch out.
Stop messing around already.
I'm gonna switch to Rokuro in the main party since I said I was gonna try him out for a bit. So I don't forget.
It's an honor to serve as the Vanguard.
It sure is. Nothing to do with the Silveranti dynasty, though, just to be clear. Don't want there to be any confusion. I should heal his health, too, I guess, while we're thinking about it. What was I going to say? Totally fell out of my head. Oh, I know we talked about this before in terms of, like, the special meaning it has in a world where, like, travel and correspondingly information is tightly controlled by the Abbey. The way that these rumor mills leak out about the group's adventures, but I think in an even more general sense, it's really just interesting and strikes me as unusual and satisfying to have this structure where not only do you revisit the towns you've been to before in this game, of course that happens in a lot of JRPGs, and not only have the towns changed, that happens too, but also you have this interesting layer of the rumor mill around everything the party has done. So you see everyone like learning about the party, but also misunderstanding what it is they're up to. That I feel is something that is pretty unusual in terms of how JRPGs tell their stories, and it's neat to see the spread of misinformation in real time.
The nights are so cold of late. It's gotten harder to get flamestone, too.
I hear the ported
You gotta hold yourself to the original challenge, Grail.
No matter how much flamestone they
Yeah, it'll be good to get some time with Rokuro. I'm excited
they
about
can't
it.
Get it shipped out. I'm sure the Abbey is aware of the situation. It's not just us who are suffering. We have to endure.
Times like these is when we need to practice Lord Artorias' teachings. The many outweigh the individual.
Exactly. I'm sure Lord Artorias will think of us soon and send aid.
He doesn't give a damn about any of you.
How dare you!
The many outweigh the individual, right? Artorias wants to save humanity as a whole. Your individual troubles aren't important to
Shit,
him.
you're right.
You have no idea what you're talking about. Aren't we part of the whole he wants to save?
What happy fools.
Sorry about that.
Pottery, fine, point taken.
She's been taking it out on everyone around her.
Really? What a troublesome kid.
But really, that speech was incredible.
Let me rephrase then. It's fun to see the spread of information in real time when there aren't real world stakes, so you can appreciate it as a narrative device and bask in the thematic impact of it without worrying about the real world gradually unraveling at the seams. How about that? Is that better?
Eleanor, I need you to wait outside. The boss of the Bloodwings knows
You're right
an
about that.
exorcist is with us, but
Say no more. I'm sure they have clients who wouldn't appreciate their faces being known to the Abbey.
correct. Laphicet, you stay with Eleanor.
Okay.
I'll be back soon.
My thanks for coming all this way. It's been a while. Would you care for a peach pie?
What do you want?
Oh, it would do you good to unwind every now and again, you know. Stretch a bow too far and its string is bound to snap.
What do you want?
I mean, that's something that I wouldn't mind leaning into because at least then we get a Prince reference out of it. The artist formerly known as Twitter.com. I'm sure there are people who have already gotten that going, but that would be, I think, an appropriate jab for their particular brand of silliness right now.
I would like you to escort this person out of the capital.
Madam, that is a bird, not a person.
Something smells about this. Literally. Where am I taking them?
Somewhere the authorities can't reach them.
Sounds nice. I could do with such a place myself.
No joke. We've been looking for a place to lay low, but we haven't had any luck yet.
Well, come to think of it, I've heard a rumor that it's been a while since the Abbey has had any contact from Titania.
Prison Island.
Titania? But I thought the Abbey was in direct control of that place. Has the situation there gotten that bad since you left?
Sometimes the answer is right under your nose. I think it might work.
Yeah, could make a decent hideout, actually. The Therians could definitely get their fill of malevolence there.
And the Abbey is far too goody-goody to imagine an escaped prisoner would ever return to her prison by her own free will.
At the very least, I'd say it's worth checking out.
I take it our intel has proven useful.
It has. But before we go, have you heard anything about the Abbey harboring demons?
I'm aware there was a demon in the villa, and that it has been relocated.
Damn.
Where?
I can't say right this moment, but I'm sure we will find out shortly.
Yeah, absolutely, Pottery.
All right. Then in exchange for this passenger
It's that part of Act 2, right?
More information on that demon.
You gotta go home before you change the world. It's the rules of JRPGs.
I heard about your confrontation with Melchior. I'm sorry I wasn't able to help you find him.
Yeah, he really blew that one, Toots.
It's fine. What's done is done.
Have you given up on finding Eifried?
No, I haven't. The crew and I will do whatever we can to quash the Abbey's plans. We do them enough damage, and the Abbey ought to start thinking about putting their hostage to good use. They'll set him up as a trap for us, and that's when we'll steal him back.
Attacking the Abbey to create an opening for his escape.
Clever. It's what Eifried would do. That's all.
That would be kind of a fun project to undertake, Grail, with games that take place in the same world and different points in history and also feature the same monster types, like looking at their locations and trying to chart the trajectory of monster migration over the years. That seems like someone with a very specific interest in video games that is different than mine who would undertake that and post the findings on Reddit or something. But that's definitely the kind of post that I would read and upvote. So many aspects to games like this, I tell you.
They're taking a while. Yeah.
Well, that's the trade-off, isn't it, Just?
The Shepherd has a special mission for you. You are to protect the Malak Lafiset and bring him to the Loegres Abbey headquarters.
What's wrong?
Eleanor, no! Trust your new family, not your old one.
Take a walk around the capital for a bit? I can show you some of the sights.
Judas!
But, You can't trust me. I understand.
No, it's not that. I promise. I'd love to go sightseeing with you, Eleanor.
Laffy said. Well, we'll do it another time, okay?
Why?
It's just, you know, Velvet would get mad at us.
Get mad about what?
Ah, you're done. And who is this?
That's a secret.
VIP entrusted to us by the head of the Bloodwings. We're stowing them away on Titania where the bad guys can't get at them. The prison island? Just who is this person?
It's illegal for you to ask me that.
Don't ask.
What?
Hey, something smells nice.
Huh?
Stop sniffing things. We're leaving.
Ah, pottery. A fellow person of culture, I see.
I can't believe you'd take a job without bothering to ask who you're escorting or why.
You see, I would make the references either way, but it is a good dog whistle to root out who's in the know.
The less you know, the less trouble you invite.
Did you like the new season? It took me a minute and a couple of watches, but I think I am a distinct fan of it now.
Who is that caped man?
I do not know, but his hawk seemed extraordinarily well trained.
Trained to hunt, maybe?
I'd imagine. It takes a great deal of time and money to train a bird like that. What is it?
I smell something nice.
Indeed. The scent is somehow familiar. It can't be.
What are you two sniffing at?
Aha! They're bloodhounds.
Yeah,
on
that's
the
fair.
hunt. But we're talking about hawks hunting, aren't we?
Come again?
Oh, I'm sorry. Please excuse my poor manners.
Alright, so I assume we have to go back to the docks to take this gentleman to Titania. Oh, but we can also advance the Magilu's Menagerie side quest. I kind of want to do that. Oh, the docks are back in Sexton anyway, so that's where we're going, all things considered. Fantastic. And we're off. I'm trying to think of other I think you should leave bits to do now based on Berseria. For 50 seconds, I thought there was demons in the world. I didn't know that it was my friend wearing a demon mask. Get the Abbey's exclusive dog door. Keep demons out. So there is still a little bit of background chitter chatter in the towns, like that gentleman who was shouting out about fish being for sale, but it is much more muted than Zestiria, which I feel like is a nice way to make it actually feel like the ambiance and background experience of living in a city or town and navigating that, as opposed to just overwhelming you with background dialogue. Grail, we're talking about a fantastic comedy show, I would say, but definitely an acquired taste on Netflix. I think you should leave with Tim Robinson. He's the main comedian whose brainchild it is. So if you ever find yourself needing a very particular kind of laugh, just watch the first bit from the first episode and you'll immediately understand everything it's about. Mutton? Man, Well, all this time, I wasn't sure how to get into Tales of Xillia, and now I finally know. It's through the meat. I don't know why I didn't guess that sooner. Finally! Asked and answered.
Could you fit my comedy act into tonight's show? I'm still breaking in my new partner, but I can carry the act.
I can't wait. I could use some more nightmares.
For you, Maggie dear, I'll do it as a personal favor, but you get 200 flat. No expenses, no per diem.
Oh, come on. Don't be so stingy.
It gets worse. Our headliner is doubling up after, and the opener flubbed their lines and lost us minutes.
Playing deuce for a cold house? Well, all right. Them's the break.
The show must go on.
What are you even saying?
I'm saying we're going on, and you are my
That's what I
straight
said.
Man.
What? You are serious?
I'll take care of the actual funny bits. Just act like you always do, and we'll be fine. Bonus points if you toss the men in the audience a glare of contempt every now and then. Just trust me.
Hold on. This is all happening
Feel
so
seen.
fast. I'm not sure I'm ready for...
You'd better get ready, because the curtain's going up.
Oh my god, that was so fast.
Hi there! We're Moggy and Val, your lovely comedians for today! Magicazam! We're still new to the comedy business, but we'll do our best to give you a memorable show.
Oh, that reminds me, not to interrupt this fantastic sequence, but I hadn't made the connection the first time I played Arise about how one of the go-to invocations that Rinwell uses when she's casting is Magicazam. And so having that as the perfect call out to the actual other Tales game I was playing at the moment was fantastic resonance between the two games.
Oh, now, I'm Moggy, the bright, beaming one in the pair, while my moody little partner here is... Hey, what's wrong, Val? Everything okay? You need to put some energy into this, or we're in trouble. Come on, if you've got one redeeming feature, it's your moxie.
That might be, but this is different.
I can see you're going through something right now. All right, let's take a deep breath.
Yeah, a lot of fun throwaways, Padre. Like, you get the gist.
Excuse us for just one moment.
Or blah, 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 which I think Rita also has, but I think they both have.
I can't help it. I've never talked in front of such a big crowd before.
Wait, don't tell me you've got stage fright?
So what if I do?
That's so unlike you. Just pretend that you're fighting some nasty exorcist and give it some gusto.
Easy for you to say. I'm embarrassed out here.
Don't be such a girl.
I am a girl.
That's it. Just do that, but project your voice.
I can't, and I don't want to.
You're a comedian. You have to. Where's your passion for your newfound art?
I'm not one, and I've never had any.
No, I can see it within you, deep down, the burning passion of a true artist at heart.
I've had enough. I can't do this with you.
A different sort of incantation, but also fantastic, Grail. Yes.
Show's over.
Well, you've certainly shown me something new. A comedy team that just stands on stage whispering.
It was a comedy sketch about not being able to do comedy.
So, what did you think?
Padre. Velvet mutters to herself grimly, I don't want to be around anymore.
Don't quit your day job.
That's what I thought.
Ah, now she plays the straight man.
There's a girl in the comedy act who doesn't know what comedy is. That's the new reason it's funny. That can be the funny thing. Yeah, Meow was definitely one of my highlights for Rita. I also love, I don't know whether either of you knows this for a fact. I feel like it's the kind of thing that you might know, and I didn't actually look it up, but the sense I got based on just playing a lot of battles and a lot of hours with Rita and the party was it seemed like when she had gold cats enabled for casting, she was more likely to cast that with high frequency than any other spell, which to me was just like such a nice little gameplay flourish of how obsessed she is with cats and how much she relates to them, that she would just emphasize the cat spell. So again, I don't know. I didn't actually like map out the statistical likelihood of any given spell to validate that, but that was how it felt to me as a player when she kept hammering them away.
This is bullcrap. You're gouging us just because you can.
Well, if you want to pay less, maybe you should go find someone more generous.
Looks like they're at it again.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be fitting in two ways, Pottery. I hadn't even thought about that. The one who writes her name on all the money to make a point about how currency flows through economies.
What's happening?
The quietly resident economist.
Huh? I was haggling for supplies, and...
Tell you what, I'll give you a fair price. Actually, just take what you need. We should all endeavor to help contribute to the common good of humanity, rather than selfishly pursue wanton
Also, and I don't know why I want to say this, but Artorias is just the absolute best. And then he passed out in a coma.
What? Are you sure?
No. Wait. What was I saying?
You felt that too, didn't you, kiddo?
Yeah, it disappeared, but I felt a strong force coming from
Open the
somewhere
door to
down
despair is one that I
It's called
vividly remember.
a
Yeah,
Moloch zone of influence.
even years later.
Wait, if it's north of here, then...
The Empyrean's throne?
Did that happen because of something Innominat and Artorias did?
I don't know.
I've got a bad feeling about this. We should get far away from here, and quickly.
Grail.
The suppression.
If you can't love Berseria, you're going in timeout. You gotta give it a chance, Grail. It happens without me even realizing it. How have we again ended up on every other Tales game? And this is a key moment in the story. We just experienced the advent of the suppression. Like, this dude just got brainwashed for no apparent reason in a way that had nothing to do with malevolence.
Off-putting. But our job with Tabitha comes first. And we need a hideout soon, too.
True enough.
Is that true enough? I feel like if that kind of thing were to happen during an adventure I was going on, I would immediately drop everything else and say, wait, we need to figure out this, like, remote control brainwashing that is happening.
Hey, geezer, you alright?
What nonsense are you spouting?
Probably just the wind.
That's one spirited old man.
Well, it's just that you suddenly got all polite on me, and you were all like, oh no, good chum, worry not about your debt to me.
I thought I said stop spouting nonsense.
It's not nonsense. You did say it. I heard you say it.
He did, but we were all acting strangely.
The last 10 minutes just doesn't count. We've all decided.
No, I simply couldn't. You first, dear friend. There's no way in hell I would ever let you go first.
Come to think of it, that's right.
Pottery, that is a fair point, so we're just going to blame you. You can be our sin eater for these last few streams.
Ruthless.
They lost control of themselves, but still have their memories. Maybe something was manipulating them.
What in the world happened to us?
I don't get it, but what I do get is that he said we don't owe him nothing. So my debt to you is off, right, old man?
Same here. Same here.
Shut your traps. I'd be flat broke if I let you knuckleheads off the hook. Now shut up and pay up.
Something really strange happened here.
Seems so. And I think this is just the beginning of it.
Manipulation. Looks like that's the only exclamation mark. Oh no! Anyway. On to the ship. I know, Grail, you called it the one cosmic law, apparently. You say that, and it makes me worried, though. See, I'm waffling here because I'm interested in the class 4 zones, but we're also really breaking interesting ground in the story, so I feel like we should forge ahead. All right, I'm going to take on side quest debt because I do want to try out at least a couple of the class 4 zones, but now is not the moment for it. We forge ahead.
All right, we're safely on the rolling waves. Don't you think it's time you showed us your face, mystery monk?
The magical mystery monk.
Right. My apologies.
I knew it! Prince Percival!
Percival Ilmid Asgard, crowned prince and heir to the throne of the Midgand Kingdom.
Uh-huh.
So he's next in line, is he?
Grail.
It looks like someone already had me figured out.
I mean, we already knew he smelled great, so come
I
on.
could tell from your fragrant wood scent, as only the royal family may wear it. But if I may ask, why?
Must I explain myself to gain your aid? I myself could ask what an exorcist is doing consorting with members of the underworld.
I don't...
It doesn't matter why you're here. On this ship, you're here for us to use to our advantage.
Treat me as you will. It's not like I can ever go back.
Why don't you tell us a little
For
more
fellow
about
born
that?
with silver spoons spewing out of his mouth, Princie Pooh's rather laid back. Prince Percival is an upstanding man, renowned for both his intelligence and his fair, just demeanor. It's widely believed that with him on the throne, Midgand's prosperity will continue and...
Look, I played dumb earlier, but I smelled that scent too. He wore it for us to notice. He wanted us to know just what sort of position he held, and how useful he could be to us.
He surprised me, at least.
Do you think we're being led into another trap?
We definitely can't take that possibility off the table.
When the time comes, he'll make a good hostage, if nothing else.
Not if the ones we face are after his life, too.
For now,
That's what
let's
I was
just make sure we
thinking.
keep an eye on him.
The prince. He said he couldn't go back.
I wonder why.
Definitely nothing to do with Artorias, because as we all know, Artorias is just the best.
The whole island's a prison. It's like a secret fort or something.
That's why they call it Secret Fort Island.
I don't see a single exorcist on watch.
Let's scope out the inside.
Part of the plan, he says. Want to know about the plan? So our expanded party includes 2 delightful NPC demons, another Therian, and a Crown Prince. The Crown Prince. Talk about a mosaic of characters. Gecko Bumps. Oh, I love it. That was worth taking the time to read. Okay, but not twice. I was trying to talk to Kamoana. I'm not scared. Much. That's such a specific vibe, Grail, but yes, I get it. That definitely tracks. Yeah, man, Artorias, that guy, bro, just 10 million followers, bro, coolest guy in the world. Reached out to my DMs, answered me right away, man.
An exorcist.
Gonna get him on the podcast, dude. He has some groundbreaking things to say about AI, dude. He's on the cutting edge of NLP. I bought $5,000 worth of his tokens. They're worth $500 now. They're gonna come back, bro.
She's dead.
The Headless Knight is back?
Oh, Jesus.
Think this is the demon that attacked her?
Another prison riot?
Kurogane, Dial. You two protect Kamoana and the prince.
Understood.
You're giving me a headache.
Stay sharp! This one must have survived the riot!
Killing flash! When I'm this close, I want this! Form zero!
Sick.
Be proud. You made me unleash my full power.
That was a very satisfying
So
attack
the
with
Abbey
Rokuro.
actually failed to quell the riot?
I find that hard to believe. The prison was heavily staffed with exorcists.
Perhaps it was venomization.
Venomization?
He'd be too powerful, Grail. He'd break the game. That's why.
Demons to eat each other in order to produce ever stronger demons.
He'd be an S-tier character.
So the demons devoured each other, creating a demon too powerful for the exorcists to control.
It's called venomization, we may recall.
The riot didn't help. Now whose fault could that have been, I wonder?
Whatever happened doesn't matter to us now. We need to focus on how to take this place for ourselves.
That exorcist from before said something about a headless knight, right?
That one's probably the leader.
Then we hunt it down and destroy it.
Until we capture the island, let's use this room for our staging ground. I'll leave the prince and Kamoana to you two. Eliminate any enemies who come in.
Understood.
Don't expect much from me, but all right.
Oh, Dial, weren't you listening? We expect the world from you.
If anything happens, call for me and I'll come running to protect you, okay?
Okay, you stay safe too, Eleanor.
Let's go.
Looks like we probably want to go in the other direction. Life's so much easier when we look at the map before wildly running off. Grail, I know you missed your favorite music in this game, didn't you? Taiga Headin'! It's on. There we go. Boy, I feel like having that tutorial with a bunch of spellcasters was not the most fair thing in the world. You love it, Grail, and there's nothing you can say to convince me otherwise.
We're finished here. Let's go.
This island reeks with malevolence.
I imagine it's emanating from all the big old demons roaming about.
That does make sense. Alright. I kind of want to go to the question mark first before we... or the exclamation point before we go to the new area, so let's do that.
I'll finish this quick.
I hope it's one of the prisoners we got to meet at the very beginning of the game, still hanging out here somehow. That'd be fun. Well, at least you sound at peace with putting it down for the night, Grail. That's all that really counts. I know, that's really all I meant. I'm just rooting for that goblin, dude. That counter is very satisfying when it hits. I think that one of the demons just killed another one of the demons. Unless there was just a totally invisible attack that hit. Oh, thank you. I didn't even notice she had died. Yeah, I could definitely buy into a version of this that was grounded in monster collection mechanics. It would definitely be a very different sort of thematic meaning to it than you get in Dawn of the New World, but especially with the focus in the story right now on amassing malevolence, that would be a really easy explanation as to why you wanted to do it. God damn it, it was just a turtles. I really should have known that. That one's on me.
I'm so busy I can't even notice what's going on around me.
You're not fooling anybody.
We've all been there.
Why bother?
I was hoping to not have to deal with yous guys. Whenever I run into
Doc Toidles.
I lose so much money.
Because Velvet always forces unreasonable demands on you?
Oh, Miss
Yeah, white
Exorcist.
Toidles.
Your concern warms my little Toidle's heart.
I'm not forcing anything. I just think he's trying to take advantage of us by fixing his prices well above market rate.
Price fixing?
Yeah, I think that's right, Pottery.
Marking up items so as to take advantage of the less fortunate? I was under the impression that the Abbey strictly forbade such unscrupulous business tactics.
Perish the thought, Miss. Our accounting is always
It could be an interesting kind of mirror to the kind of monster raising you get in Dawn of the New World also, because since we already have the mechanics in the world of venomization, you could almost imagine a system that lets you like level up or even evolve monsters by sacrificing other monsters to them, which sounds more Yu-Gi-Oh than I mean it to be, but kind of that instrumental use of some monsters as the food and fodder for others. Then of course it would be the question of how would you sort of wrap around in the storytelling to see that in a different, more empowering and less sadistic way by the end of the story. But maybe as we get on in the plot as it is written, we can speculate about how a monster collection mechanic could have woven into the overall arc. That could be fun.
above board. 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. No matter when's and no matter where's, you can get whatever you needs for the same fair price.
That's good to hear. Eleanor, give the nice turtles that smile he so desires.
I'm sure running a business is hard work. Hang in there.
Much obliged.
I mean, what we're describing is also the literal opposite of Ni no Kuni. The conceit of monster collection in Ni no Kuni is that you befriend literally every creature in the world by the end of the game, whereas this is more literally everything in the world is like disposable ammunition in the war against Artorias. Oliver, right? That's the hero's name in Ni no Kuni. It's been a minute. I wanted to say Oliver, but I wasn't sure if that was right in my head. That's a duology of games I've been interested in replaying, because I loved Ni no Kuni so much the first time that it totally led me to reconsider how I'd thought about my childhood as a gamer and growing up as a gamer. And so then I wrote a really long analysis about that, which I am going to drop in the chat, because it's also very much of a piece with thinking about JRPGs and how JRPGs change as we grow up. And the sequel is one of those weird games where I don't think it's quite the same experience as I had with some of the Tales games as we've talked about, but because I liked it when I played it, and I played it, I would say, as an adult, really just a couple of years ago. There was a lot of it that I didn't fall in love with. Like, it was hard for me to spend so much time on sort of the idle mechanics of building a kingdom and stuff, and yet, despite kind of not loving it as much as I did the first game, I found myself kind of nostalgically thinking about it more than I expected to, with an itch to just replay it through a new lens. Especially with all the Tales stuff, I feel like that's kind of a very natural complement to a lot of what Ni no Kuni's DNA is. Well, I guess we can wind our way further in. Yeah, probably past the turtles. That would be the obvious way to go. My goodness, I tell you, Grail, I turn on the news, and it's like every corner of the country is going through such unbelievable and kind of harrowing weather chaos right now, between what you're talking about and then all of the craziness in Hawaii a couple weeks ago. Craziness, I mean, I should say like horrific tragedy and chaos, and everything in California. It's like, oh, it's a scary time we live in, my friends. Gotta just stay safe and hope for the best, I guess. Yeah, I'd agree with that, Pottery. And honestly, maybe that's part of why I'm feeling nostalgic for the second one, because I think the story told by the first one is one of my favorite stories that has been told in gaming history over the last couple decades, I would say. I really, really loved it. But I agree with you in terms of the gameplay of the first one being a little hard to get on board with, whereas the gameplay of the second one, I feel like, especially for a Tales veteran, is much more familiar and playable and just kind of fun in a way that the first one is fine, but doesn't have that same level of fun and replayability. So maybe that's part of it. Yeah, come on, man. It's been apocalypse time for so long that the idea of being in the end times is played out. How real but sad is that? Yeah, I think a lot of the game is about almost childlike simplicity in a lot of ways, which I have to imagine is part of what they were going for with the battle system as well, but absolutely agreed. If you're after a really sophisticated combat system with a lot of different levers and customization options, Ni no Kuni is not it. See, I don't know about that though, Pottery, because I've heard a lot of people say that it was made for a younger audience than them. All I would say, and I swear to God, I'm not a living ad, but check out the article that I posted, because I think it's kind of, in some ways, it's deceptively childish, and I think a lot of what the story is talking about is not just meant for children, but is actually a really deliberate way of trying to call like adult gamers and people in the world back to their inner child. And once I saw it that way, as an adult, I got a ton out of it. So, food for thought. If you do check it out, love to know what you think. Oh, for sure. Yeah, in terms of gameplay, I 100% with you there. I get that. It's never too late to learn to code or do anything for the sake of the Tales series, Grail. Although you're speaking to someone who is clearly on the other end of the spectrum in terms of that stuff, with the amount of myself that I'm dedicating to Tales of Praxis. So choose to emulate that or not at your own risk.
Did you see my complete and utter victory? Did you?
Yeah, I'm not a developer, as I think as a parent, but I will keep my ear to the ground for sure, in case I come across anyone. So is this the door we want? Yeah, that's the way most programmers I know talk, Pottery. Not that I can fault them for that. Alright, guess we need to go deeper. Let's do it. Ah, not a dangerous encounter. With casters? Oh no! It's a really dangerous encounter. Jesus! The one-hit kill of Rokuro and Velvet? No. Ain't nobody got time for that. Yeah, I feel really blessed that I got the help of one of the highest quality developers I know, who also just happens to be one of my closest friends when I was actually creating the website for With a Terrible Fate. Because, I mean, there's a ton of stuff we could still improve, but I would say that the site as we have it now is pretty beautiful and custom and speaks to a lot of the kind of ethos that we want to bring to the gaming conversation, and I cannot take credit for that. That is all shout out to my buddy Nick Balboni, who is another case of a software developer with not enough time and too many projects on his hands, to the point that he's now running his own startup and managing a lot of that stuff. But we were tight enough that I was able to impress upon him, please do this, I'll pay you, it's important to me, I think it'd be a cool thing for us to do together. And if he hadn't said yes, I don't know where the site would be, but I will say in terms of site history, to give you an idea of the head I have on my shoulders for that stuff, back when it was initially a blog for Majora's Mask, the very first version of it was a WordPress site that was gray text on a black background, because I thought I was really cool and that would be a really fun way to read things. It's not. So you can all thank Nick Balboni as well. There may be a lot of content to read on With a Terrible Fate, but at least you can literally read it thanks to the design of the website.
The way you were talking, it seemed like you had an idea of who was behind the riot. What happened?
I'll pass on the thanks, Grail. He'll appreciate that.
There were reports of a large riot, but I was caught up in chasing you, so I heard little else.
Yeah, Grail, this is what I show up for. Are you kidding me? If I'm not dying from dangerous encounters that aren't fair and balanced, I'm not living.
Instigated the other prisoners to riot so that we could escape. She used the prisoners?
Yeah, I know, Padre. I'm with you. It's a different breed. There are people like that out there.
How did it end?
We didn't stay to see, but the prisoners were losing badly. At least, that's what it looked like. But if that was the case, then where did all the exorcists go?
I know Oscar left to report the incident, but the other guards should have remained at their posts.
Well, if they didn't flee, we have to assume.
Yeah, I guess. I was sitting here wondering, like, is Pottery going to call me on it? I talk about With a Terrible Fate as a passion project sometimes. I almost see it and conceptualize it myself as a bit of a second job, because even though we are solely supported by our wonderful, passionate community, and it's certainly not enough to constitute a revenue stream per se, everyone involved in the project really does treat it as like an independent publication and entity that kind of goes beyond a passion project and really tries to contribute to the sector and the way in which people think about these things. So yes and no. I kind of say second job, but second job that is purely fueled by passion and belief that this is important and work worth doing. So a little bit of both, but point taken.
And they were all killed.
By this headless knight, perhaps? Well, no sense losing our heads, I suppose. But it looks like we're in for a heck of a fight.
All we have to do is mop up anyone who's left.
Oh, I appreciate it, Pottery. Well, mad respect to y'all. I mean, the reason that we've continued doing it for so long and getting involved is, just recognizing the support of the community and people telling us that, this is a way that's valuable for thinking about video games, and it's worth putting that out there into the world. So it's a big virtuous circle. Give yourselves a pat on the back and each other a big virtual hug, my real-life JRPG party members. Oh, there's a skit hanging out. Yeah, Grail, for what it's worth, and I might have told you this before, I don't know if it's helpful to you, but I think one of the things that I've really been working on myself in terms of managing all these different things, because, yeah, I say what I do about With a Terrible Fate, but the fact remains I have a lot of different things to manage myself. Just getting more in tune with, like, almost your own body and feeling it in your bones when you're in the mood to do a particular thing. And so then it's like, you don't have to feel bad if you don't pick up something like writing or storytelling or world building for a while, so long as when you are in the mood, you really, like, make the time and space to do it. And then it never really feels like a chore. It's more of just, like, being in touch with following whatever you're into at the moment. So easier said than done. And like I said, it's something that I'm still working on myself, but I think it can be helpful to kind of retrain your brain on that.
What was it called? Venomization, right? The dark ritual of making demons feed on each other to birth stronger...
That's what I said!
Eisen, how many demons does the ritual require?
It's more a matter of quality than quantity.
Yeah, pottery, I'm totally on that train too. I mean, honestly, like, even for the stuff that I do with the Terrible Fate, I mean, so much of it is, you know, consuming and thinking about this media even before, you know, like, pen is put to page about it, or, you know, even without the streams or things like that. Like, I think it can also be empowering to recognize that there's a lot of time you're spending thinking about and working on this stuff, even if there's not tangible output to point to. Like, I mean, Grail, I'll call you out to hopefully just make you feel a little bit better about this. I mean, you've talked through a not insignificant amount of your world building and storytelling and the stuff that you're thinking about with me on the stream. And, like, I would absolutely count that as work that you're putting into those efforts. So it's all in how you look at it, right? And of course you could always be doing more, but I think there are certain people, and it sounds like you're one of them. I know I'm one of them, where you sort of look for excuses and interpretations to support the idea that you're procrastinating and not putting in the work that you should be. It's not always true. So don't be afraid to give yourself a kinder interpretation of the past, like Regal did in Tales of Symphonia. See, it's all connected. That's why it's Tales of Praxis, because it can actually guide the way you conduct yourself in the real world and live your actual life.
Stronger demons mean more powerful malevolence.
The ritual mixes the victor's malevolence with that of the devoured, creating a terrible, bloodthirsty monster. You see,
absolutely, Grail. Yep, couldn't have said it better myself.
With it, the victor's
hopefully this helps you. I hope it does. I'd love to be able to do that for you.
So it's something even more than a monster. A seething ball of pure power and malevolence.
Roguro, don't tell me you're considering it for yourself.
Of course I am. I'll consider anything that can make me stronger.
You cannot be serious!
What's there to be so surprised about? Oh, look at Velvet. She's already eaten countless demons.
You're ridiculous!
He's right. If it helps me find my vengeance, I don't care.
Velvet? Wait, are you really going to do it?
Relax, it's not gonna happen. Becoming a monster wouldn't bother me. But when I defeat my rival, I have to be myself for it to mean anything. It's the same for Velvet.
It is?
Besides, if I kill a previous victor of the ritual, I'll have proved myself strong enough not to need the extra power.
You're ridiculous.
I do love Rokuro's philosophy about this stuff. It's very, well, Bushido code, isn't it? But a nice way of driving to the heart of some of the game's themes, I think. Interesting to see this cadence of Velvet's character development, too, where I feel like, at least the way I'm reading it, in the first act, she was really dead set on guiding all of her actions in order to achieve revenge against Artorias. And then in the beginning of the second act, after she failed to realize that revenge, she kind of backed off and started investing in and caring about other things, sort of in spite of herself, like Laffy said, even like Eleanor to an extent, just kind of the welfare of the group, things other than revenge against Artorias. And now, like, especially as she's learning more about the history of the world, it's almost like she's doubling back and doubling down on the revenge quest, where she's like trying to talk herself and the group into thinking that she hasn't changed, even though she has. Like, it's only in the last couple streams really that she's gone back on this horse of saying, I'm going to use everyone as a tool for revenge no matter what it takes. So interesting to wonder kind of how things have evolved and what's changed in her mind that is prompting her to re-emphasize that in a way that she had kind of strayed away from a bit. I thought we were on the second floor. Am I crazy? I am crazy? Looks like that might take us down. Either this dungeon is more of a maze than it needs to be, or I am just gleefully distracting myself with our great conversation. Which is fine, but I just need to take a minute to figure out where the hell Aaron's going here. Cheers, Pottery. So great to see you. A pleasure as always. Yeah, don't be a stranger. If you get a chance to check out the Ni no Kuni stuff, definitely let me know what you think. Hope to see you back on Friday, my friend. It'll be at the same time. We're also, I'll give details at the end of the stream, but obviously for PAX, we're going to have a bit of a different schedule next week and probably the Monday after that. So stay tuned for that too, but we'll make sure everyone gets the updates. All right. Better late than never to find our way to that miraculous star off in the distance.
The Headless Knight!
He must be the product of the venomization.
Well, he definitely looks vicious enough.
Not as vicious
It's
as
like poor
Velvet
Kurugane if Kurugane lifted. No, I love you, Kurugane, just the way you are.
Where's his voice even coming from?
Oh, no thank you. Not even if you paid me would I look inside that thing. Although I guess the last time we fought a suit of armor and there was something inside, it was attack in Tales of Vesperia, so maybe I would look inside upon reflection. Yeah, I love that for you, Grail. If you end up getting any like actionable insights or thoughts that really kind of help to catalyze your writing or perspective on world building, I'd love to know how the stream and our time together has impacted that. 'Cause that would be a big win for us here at With the Terrible Fate as well.
Well, that takes care of that.
It wasn't as bad as I feared it might be.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I feel
Where it
something
all
again.
began.
More malevolence?
No, another Earth Pulse point. It must be on this island.
Now they're going to realize that Velvet is a
It's
Therian.
very close.
Directly underneath us, I would guess.
I do remember that conversation. I quite liked that conversation with you. Well, cheers. If I helped with that, I mean, that's one of my pet focuses and areas of interest, if not expertise, when it comes to reading video game stories. So especially if I could help you with that, and if I can continue to in the future, that is nothing but a win for me. Thank you for telling me, Grail. I'm so glad that had such a productive impact on you. Just made my week. You sly dog.
What is this place?
Welcome to the most secure cell in the entire complex. The darkest hole in Titania. Feel anything, Laphicet?
Yeah, I think this is the Earth Pulse point.
If this cell is where the Earth Pulse point is, then does that mean it housed a Therian?
It sure does mean that.
Yeah. And a real hungry one at that.
The hungriest.
Every day, they would
Not the
toss demons into
theme.
its cell. It would devour its fill, then wipe the blood from its lips. Never once realizing, it was delivering to Inominat the malevolence of hundreds of demons and prisoners. And then one day, there appeared before it a female Moloch, who shattered the barrier and freed the Therian from its cage. But the Therian knew no mercy, and it devoured its liberator. And it was then... It was then I obtained the power. The power to avenge my brother.
Velvet, you're a Therian?
This prison island was a feeding ground for the Therian, harnessing the malevolence created by the prison.
Had she really not told them that she was a Therian up to that point?
Escaped. The malevolence went out of control.
That's an interesting narrative moment, just because that's one of those facts that I would have sworn to you she had shared that with the party, or the party knew it. But now as they're having this revelation and I'm actually thinking back, I can see in my head, oh, no, actually, maybe that was just an inference that I drew and they never had that conversation. I like it when games kind of play tricks on you in that way. Yeah, Oscar, but I don't think Oscar shared that with anyone else, so I feel like that tracks. Also, Grail, I would not say that's an issue. I think that's just a perspective on storytelling, right? I mean, the reason that I'm so narrowly focused on thinking about the storytelling of video games is that even beyond games that tell stories, because that's a strictly broader category, I think video games are a really interesting medium for telling stories about particular kinds of agencies and relationships between the players engaging with those games and the avatars and other various modes of representation of the player's agency within the world. So I think, that's a whole language unto itself of telling stories. And so I would say, if that's what you find yourself always asking, don't, fight it or see it as an issue. Just lean into it. I mean, that tells you a lot about yourself and the way you see the world and narrative, I think.
The same darn thing that happened back in Kamilana's village. Lord Artorias would never have done such a thing.
He super would have.
What's so unbelievable? That he used his wife's brother as a human sacrifice? That he imprisoned his wife's sister? Because that's what your damned holy shepherd did! All to get his hands on Inominat's power!
I'm sure he had a reason for...
A reason? To spare the world of its pain? Don't give me that! Who will spare my brother's pain? Who will soothe my brother's despair? He murdered my little brother Loppy! And you'll stand there and tell me it was for the greater good?
Me too. I think this is really well executed.
At any rate, that's one less Therian for us to track down.
Velvet.
I really kind of accidentally spoiled this at the start of the stream. But again, I think it was kind of the point that we realized this before the party did.
Kamilana?
That can't be good.
Did Velvet yell at you so hard you're starting to hear voices now? I have a feeling something's wrong. Kamilana could be in danger.
But we already beat the Headless Knight.
I still can't shake this feeling. Please, let's go back and check on them.
So I think I do really like that scene too, Grail, and I think something that is worth our keeping an eye on as we move forward from here is I think one of the really interesting things that happens in that scene is Velvet understands herself through a new interpretation and narrative. Like, the pieces are finally falling into place for her, where she realizes not the entirety of Artorias's plan, but the role that she played in it, and the fact that her imprisonment wasn't just this senseless thing that happened to her, but was actually her being very intentionally used as a tool, an instrument, and object by Artorias in order to achieve Artorias's end. And I think a really interesting way that's brought out just in the way that scene is set up is how Velvet tells the story of who she was when she was here in the prison and what it was that she was doing in the third person in this very detached way. Like, this is the story of the Therian who lived here, as opposed to saying, it was me and this was my experience and I get that I'm the Therian. And I think at least one thing that's top of mind for me in terms of why it might be the case that she's doing things in that way is that as she's getting this new self-concept and understanding why it was that she was brought into the world in this way, she's understanding how Artorias was using her, and that also might potentially give her like the mental space to reimagine who she might be outside of that revenge quest, because now that she has a better understanding of why Artorias put her there, it's not like some senseless thing that she needs to exact revenge in order to rectify. She can better understand like that her suffering was part of a scheme, and she can work to undermine that scheme for reasons beyond mere revenge. So I'm interested as the story goes forward from here and Velvet has this new perspective on herself, will we also witness a kind of turn or change in perspective in terms of how it is that she relates to what it is that she's doing? Is she still going to lean into revenge as much, or will she be considering other factors and stakeholders beside herself? So we should keep an eye on that, I think. Yeah, good question, Grail. Maybe Eleanor is just hyper attuned to the plight of kids. I mean, she does clearly have a lot of baggage in terms of everything that happened with her mother. So maybe it's like it's a superhuman capacity to have a radar for that and try to prevent other people from going through what she did. I think it's important, Grail, that we still don't know the full story yet. And so I'm hoping as we learn more about Artorias and what it is he really wants to do, and I'm sure that we will, there will perhaps be more explanation to color that. Or if there's not explanation, as is so often the case in the Tales series, I think it will be an explanation that we're lacking for a reason, or it contributes to the story in a certain way. So I'm sure we can talk about that when the time comes, like we did with Heldolf in the case of Zestiria. Yeah, and interesting, isn't it? Like, he turned Artorias turned Velvet into a one-note character, but now that she's getting this like outside vantage point from which to see herself as that one-note edgelord, maybe she'll move beyond it. That would be pretty subversive if she were able to do that. No. God, I said it, and then I heard it, and I knew you were going to call me out on it. So thank you for not letting me down, Grail. Oh, it's especially during frantic and time-sensitive sequences such as this where I really miss the ability to run faster that we get in Arise. So it just doesn't feel believable that they'd be going that slowly to get to Kamoana.
But it's what she cried out that's really on my mind. Laffy said, is Velvet truly Lord Artorias' younger sister?
She never told me.
If it were
I mean,
true,
sister-in-law.
I suppose it would explain her knowledge of Lord Artorias' training.
If you're so curious, why not ask her yourself? Hey, Velvet, what's your connection to Artorias?
Rokuro, have some tact!
I heard you whispering. Doesn't bother me. Artorias was married to my late sister, Celica. He was our brother-in-law. We lived together for more than 10 years.
That does explain a few things.
So he sacrificed his little brother and turned his sister into a Therian.
But you were his family.
To his view of the grand scheme, family is inconsequential.
Fair enough, Grail.
The needs
Asked
of the
and
many
answered.
outweigh the needs of the few. All he did was act according to his ideal logic. Well, enough chit-chat. Let's get moving.
So that's one explanation for Artorias, and we can keep that in mind as we go forward and hopefully learn more about him. One is what Velvet just offered, simply the idea that he is showing what it really means to rigidly uphold your ideals and principles, kind of like a darker representation of a lot of what Lloyd represents as a character, even in Tales of Symphonia. So that's one. it'll be interesting as we go forward to see, is that the best interpretation of what Artorias is doing? Rigid though it may be, or can we inject some more nuance there as we get to know him a little bit better? I would believe that, Grail. That's how the game really gets you to grind, just to increase movement speed.
Move it or die.
I guess the counter isn't that hard to use when enemies telegraph their moves that much. Another thing that strikes me as interesting about just this revelation of the rest of the party discovering what Velvet is that we've been talking about is if we go back to the very beginning of the game. Right, remember, we spent a lot of time first getting ingratiated with this world and coming to understand its story and themes in a very tight way through the perspective of Velvet, with her narration, her growth through the years, her betrayal. And so I think there's also a cool thing you could say about the way this game plays with perspective, where we are so focalized through Velvet in the first like 90 minutes to 2 hours of playing the game that it's very easy for us to become engrossed with her revenge quest and her particular scars and history. And so even after we get into a party context, it's natural for us to even subconsciously kind of assume that the rest of the party has like the same understanding and insight into Velvet that we do, which I think is an interesting way of kind of showing through the player's experience how easy it is for people to be kind of magnetically drawn into these revenge quests without really understanding what's at stake, than for the rug to be pulled out from under them when they actually understand the history, explaining why Velvet is how she is. It's so funny you mentioned that, Grail, because far away though you are, it just within the last 5 minutes or so started raining here in Colorado as well. So, understood. I hope you're able to stay out of the flash flood. Stay safe, most of all.
So it turns out that Velvet is a Therian who consumes malevolence.
And too much malevolence is what changes people into demons. Strong enough malevolence can persist after the person who created it dies, turning their corpse or spirit into a raging monster. That's how undead and phantom demons come about.
Then the demons Velvet killed turned back into humans because she devoured their malevolence.
Yeah, and consequently, they avoided becoming undead or anything like that.
So she saved them. Well, I mean, a corpse is a corpse, of course.
Do you think she could devour only the malevolence and turn a living demon human?
Stranger things have happened, Grail. If you don't have the resonance to see it, that's what it might look like.
Enforcing nature. When Therians are connected to Enominat through an Earth Pulse point, they seem to be able to absorb small concentrations of malevolence from the surrounding area and inhibit the creation of new demons. But any human who builds up enough malevolence to turn into a demon will keep producing malevolence as long as they live.
That's right. To devour any malevolence, I need to cut it off at the source. That's how my powers work.
Velvet, I'm sorry.
I don't mind it. Actually, I find it convenient. This way, I'll never forget my hatred for Artorias.
Plus, as long as you stay away from an Earth Pulse point, you get to keep the power of any malevolence you consume.
Fuel for my hatred, yes.
Yeah, it's like there's a fear of becoming invested in others, because especially at this point in the game, when we're this late in the story, like for Velvet to be reinforcing over and over again that she's further stoking her hatred and driving herself on that way, I take that there are multiple ways you can read those lines, but I read them as her almost trying to reassure and convince herself of that fact that that's what she's doing and that's what's driving her, when the doubts are starting to set in about whether that's really what's worth doing or what she's after. Yeah, I mean, I imagine in more of, you know, like Columbus's time, even like the 15th century, back when, you know, there were a lot of sailing expeditions to uncharted lands or areas that were kind of known of but unexplored. That's kind of the model I have in mind for what the real world might look like that would best emulate this particular kind of world that we find for ourselves here in Berseria. But yeah, the modern world, it's a good question. I feel like if we pushed the modern world slightly into the future so that we could imagine sort of a lot of the same tropes that played out during sea travel and charting and like exploration and societal growth, that played out on the stage of like interplanetary travel, like if people started colonizing Mars and other planets and such, then I could almost imagine it being reenacted in future modern terms. But I don't know if there's an easy analog available to us in the modern world per se. Aliens in space! Ah! Cisteria, A Space Odyssey. We just need to find the special interdimensional key to bleed Tales of Berseria out into Tales of Arise's world, and then we'll be sitting pretty.
Eleanor! You really came back for me. A promise is a promise, sweetheart.
Oh, too pure of heart.
Giving off a ton of malevolence.
This must be the true survivor of the venomization process.
Oh!
Hell of a coincidence that there were two powerful headless aliens in this world, though.
Headless Knight is back. She was going for Headless Knight on horseback.
Whatever the case, we'll fight whoever we have to claim this island.
Alright, now it's actually on. I should have known when I said the last one was a pushover. It's never just a pushover in a game like this. There's always a reason. Speaking of reasons. Careful, Grail, you're gonna give me an aneurysm live on stream. Boy, that would be unsettling to me if there was a concept of, like, malevolence aggregating and becoming sentient on its own in these worlds. For everything else they've developed, I feel like that would be a pretty scary bridge to cross. I guess Tiamat is a little like that. Like, it is one poor soul who's just driven to madness by the war surrounding him, but because Tiamat is therefore more about the war than about the individual, it kind of feels almost like the consequence and consciousness of the war itself. Well, we'll find out. I don't want to, jinx us prematurely, but it looks like we're doing okay in the fight so far. Hard to feel any more powerful than when you counter a boss. So does that count as an Eleanor L or a Velvet L, Grail? What's the ruling? We need a judgment call from our resident expert. This is a pretty healthy window for that counter, as I try it out some more. Fair enough, Grail. There are enough else to go around, I guess.
That's venomization, all right. Definitely stronger than that headless lump of armor.
True, Velvet is much better when she works alone.
Not yet.
Thank God, I was worried we weren't going to get one joke in about it. Jesus. These demons do not know when to quit. Oh no! Venomization continues.
No, look! It's absorbing the malevolence. It's a Therian.
Oh, never mind. Not venomization.
Actually, that hawk is Griffin. My one and only friend.
A damned Therian. So that's what Tabitha meant when she said we'd find out shortly.
But Your Highness, why do you have a Therian?
Well, we'll find out at the end, Grail. There's time for a redemption arc yet.
Since I was a child.
It's only Act 2, remember.
Even if he's a Therian now, that hasn't changed.
So you knew you were helping a Therian escape. What are you plotting?
I have no plots or schemes. I just want Griffin to be free.
I guess we shouldn't be surprised.
That's a sweet sentiment.
The Crown Prince and future King, he's gonna do whatever he likes.
I suppose I am at that. But if I am, it's the first time I've ever been allowed a choice of my own. When you're a prince, you're not a person. You're an institution, one designed to serve the state and its people. Say, for instance, you're doing your law studies and your back suddenly itches. What do?
I mean, I'd scratch it. Who wouldn't?
When I did that, my tutor gave me a whipping so hard the blood ran down my back.
Jesus.
The reason being that I prioritized a personal feeling, that is to say my itch, over my studies in service of the state. Seeing Griffin lay claim to the skies let me imagine my own freedom. It was my lone solace over the years. But then, he turned out to be responsive to Innominat's power.
I take it the Midgand royal family is well aware that the Abbey is creating Therians.
Of course. How could we not? The kingdom offers unequivocal support to Shepherd Artorius' vision of reason and will. Even so, if there was one thing I could never permit, it was seeing Griffin locked up and unable to fly.
Yeah, Grail, you've already called it out, and knowing the way that they've treated the motif in the game so far, I'm sure that they will beat us over the head with it too. But at this moment, before they've beaten us over the head with it, I will point out for the benefit of others who might not be seeing or thinking about it as vividly just yet, it's no mistake that this Therian that we're dwelling on is a bird, and it's worth keeping in mind everything that we're seeing in terms of the prince's narrative with it, and simply wanting the bird to be free, and the origins of the bird in terms of being bound up and sealed by the Abbey in relation to and dialogue with Artorius's persistent question, and kind of, I guess you could almost say koan, or riddle, or whatever descriptor you want. Why is it that birds fly?
Never. I tricked the Exorcist on guard and disabled the barrier. But then Griffin attacked the Exorcist and killed him.
That's why you said you could never go back.
They can overlook a single dead exorcist. But with Etherian removed, malevolence will engulf the capital.
I knew full well what I was doing. And yet, I couldn't watch my friend's life be stripped away.
Your Highness.
He chose a single bird over the world. Why do you think that birds fly?
There it is.
That's what Lord Artorias asked me.
He asks everyone, you're not
My
special.
book says birds can fly because their bones are light and their wing muscles are enormously strong.
Birds fly because a bird that cannot fly is no bird at all. And that's what I think.
I understand now. As long as you remain on this island, you may do as you please. But if you try to escape, I'll kill you.
That should work. This way we'll have him on hand if we ever need a hostage.
Understood. I appreciate you letting Griffin and me stay here.
Well, now that that's taken care of, let's build ourselves a hideout.
Without opening up the Pandora's box of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 too widely, this does also give me a really nice callback and reminiscence on building a home for Colony Zero in the prison camp in the Agnes Castle. We haven't talked about the motif as such in a while in the stream, and so it will obviously keep going on throughout the story, so we'll have plenty of more opportunities to dig into it and think about the way it's evolved. But I think for now, one thing that is perhaps worth thinking about, especially as we've put a little more time into chatting around and about Artorias in this most recent stream, I think the prince's answer is really telling, and I'm inclined to think sort of the right shape of an answer that the game wants us to be thinking about in terms of why is it that birds fly. This idea that a bird that couldn't fly would be no bird at all. Like it's part of the essence of a bird that it's something that flies. And so it's kind of incoherent or something that defies logic to talk about a bird that doesn't fly, like a dodo, a flightless bird, isn't a bird. That's just a category mistake. And so I think the idea that Artorias is repeatedly probing people asking this question, to me, almost sort of belies the fact that he's not comfortable with like how to understand that idea of what belongs to something's essence. Like he doesn't know what the real nature of people is, and that scares him. And so I feel almost like if we're going in that direction with it, and the rest of the game is borne out to reinforce that, we might see his obsession with relying on reason as a way of kind of guiding and controlling the actions of people whom he fundamentally feels at the end of the day he does not understand and is therefore scared of. Petty maybe, but I feel a sense of fear from Artorias too, Grail.
Wasn't she just playing with you?
Yeah, but then she left. I'm worried because she looked pretty sad. Can you go find her?
Why me? All right, fine. Just don't cry on me, okay?
Life problems of being a living suit of armor. Yeah, I wonder that too, Grail. It'll be interesting to see if that holds true, if and when we encounter the rest of the Therians too. And if it does, I wonder whether, if Artorias really was the one who incited all this, if her retaining more of her human form has to do with his attachment to her more than anything to do with Velvet per se. Another option to go with would be maybe something like Velvet's intense attachment to her revenge for Artorias, like, keeps her more tightly bound to her sense of humanity and her identity from before becoming Etherian than the others. But it's definitely something to keep in mind as we push forward
Hey,
here.
Rokuro, have you seen Eleanor?
Probably. I don't know. Get drunk.
My man.
Just try not to go overboard.
But man, are we a bunch of screw-ups or what? I mean, we've kidnapped a prince now. They gotta have laws against that. Broke out of prison, flattened Helives, tried to assassinate a shepherd. Hey, how many infractions do you think we're on the hook for?
Pardon me if I don't stop and count. If you don't like it, nobody's forcing you to tag along.
No, I still haven't repaid my debt to you.
You say that, but you really just want to beat Shigude, don't you?
Whoa, to me they're both connected. It's a long story, but I could tell you if you...
I'll pass.
Well, join me for a drink then?
Can't. I'm 19.
That's where I draw the line. I'll do anything to beat Artorias and get my revenge, but I won't drink before I turn 21. Video games.
Huh. A most interesting interpretation. What do you make of this part here, then?
Seems that way, Grail. Seems that way.
If you pronounce it Loney, Kyle, then it'd mean midriff, which probably isn't right. Maybe Muse Mila?
Well, that would make this passage read, Pornges are nummy.
Okay. Yeah, that's not right either. What's wrong, Velvet?
Have you seen Eleanor?
No, I haven't. Sorry, I know I'm supposed to watch her.
Just read somewhere where there's more light. You'll hurt your eyes like this.
Okay.
Love, love, love. All these scenes of interpretation between them. Yeah, I think that question of whether Velvet has a compulsion to be vengeful or she wants to be vengeful is another good one to be thinking about, Grail. I think it's one that can also be useful for us to use to situate Velvet relative to Artorias, because remember, at first glance, Artorias is the one who is obsessed with reason as contrasted with emotion. But I think, to me, in terms of how we've seen Velvet so far, I think there's also a sense in which, like, she experienced everything with the Crimson Moon and the Advent, and her little life was completely turned upside down, and all semblance of safety or predictability went out the window for her. And so I think in order to feel safe and structured, she did kind of organize her life around a certain logic, namely the logic of means-end reasoning with the ultimate goal of achieving revenge. And everything in her life then just became inputs to the formula of how I'm going to achieve the next thing that takes me to the next thing that takes me to revenge against Artorias. So I think, like, as much as she is counterpositioned to Artorias and juxtaposed against him as this force that's pursuing different things, I think there is something deeply resonant between them in terms of how they're both seeking out a logic through which to order and engage and feel safe within the world. Worth watching as we go forward here. Oh, Griffin talks. I love it. Ree! Oh, we can name the island whatever we want, since we've taken it over. Dial Isle, please! No need to take a vote, just impose that by fiat. Stop it, Velvet. Let us dream. Let Dial have this one thing. You took his tail, for God's sake. It hasn't grown back yet, has it? No, it decidedly has not grown back yet. Let Dial have Dial Isle, please. Damn you, Velvet. Damn you. Yeah, is there a particular reason that you call out Vesperia and Berseria for it, Grail? I mean, I feel like in various guises, these sorts of party conversations happen in a lot of them. Like I'm thinking about a lot of the campfire scenes in Tales of Symphonia. There are party breakups along the way and stuff like Abyss, too. Maybe not some of the older school ones like Destiny. And Zestiria before this. I wonder. It would be interesting to do an accounting of that. Because I don't feel like I share that intuition, but I don't know if I have strong intuitions either way about which game does them the most frequently. So it'd be cool to get an actual count of them tallied up.
Hey, you got any idea where Eleanor is?
No, sorry. I was having a meeting with Benwick and the crew about our search for Eifried.
Are you sure you're okay with putting that off? At this point, the Abbey doesn't have much reason to keep him alive. Wouldn't you rather look for him than Therians?
I know time is a factor, but we still don't have any decent leads. I think we need to stir up the Abbey and see what shakes loose. And who better to do that than you?
So this works for both of us then?
Never fear. I'm still acting out of self-interest. Besides, Eifried won't die so easily.
He's a strong man. It'd take a lot to bring him down.
Yeah. I've never seen him flinch from a storm, no matter how choppy the seas.
Where angels fear to tread, as they say.
Probably some of that as well.
Here there be dragons, as old cartographers used to say. Perhaps part of why that is the case, if it is the case with Berseria and Vesperia, or if not, then why it feels that way is, well, with Vesperia, I think I mentioned this before on the stream, but one thing that I really noticed in my replay of the definitive edition was the game is so self-consciously concerned with, you know, what it is to be autonomous and chart your own way in a world that also requires you to interact with others. And I think one of the ways that comes out in the flow of the game's story is I do think it's one of the games, maybe the game, that most frequently has all of the party members like seeming as if they're going to go off in their own directions and then actively deciding to stay together for some very short-term prudential reason, and they keep doing that and kind of stringing along small adventures throughout probably most of the first 2 acts of the game. So it really feels like everyone is constantly considering and reevaluating things on their own terms. And like we talked about earlier in Berseria, there's a lot of resonance or shared DNA between Berseria and Vesperia in that regard, in terms of a lot of the party members being here for their own reasons and kind of instrumentally being involved with each other for various stints of time and arcs. Oh man, Grail, that's risky. I hope the pizza gets to you in one piece. And I hope you tip well for that poor driver. In hopes that it does arrive. God, I never envy delivery drivers in the middle of storms. It's a harrowing adventure, I'm sure.
Hey, any idea where Eleanor went?
How should I know? I'm too busy to spare any time worrying about anyone else.
You look pretty distinctly unoccupied to me right now.
Right. I'm busy being unoccupied.
You're... what?
It's simple. When you have free time, it means you're busy trying to avoid having any business to do.
You're too weird for this world, Magilou.
Says the woman with the world's blandest personality.
I always figured you'd be the type to take off as soon as things got hairy. So what keeps you here?
I am utterly, completely, totally, wholly devoid of anything else to do. Which is to say I'm...
unoccupied.
Right, now you get it. Besides, I have to stick around to see how our bet turns out, don't I?
One of these days, Magilu, you, and not a random NPC, are going to give us insight into who you actually are and what your backstory is. Man, I know I've called out the zealousness of Magilu before, more than once on the stream, but being born is a pretty huge hassle if you think about it. Like, I'll take things that Zealous Wilder and only Zealous Wilder would say for 400, please. Amazing. I know, I was going to say that too, Grail. Talk about harkening back to our earlier conversation about the value of making time for things that you care about and want to prioritize and being in touch with what it is that you want to do. Like, relaxing and just being in the world and with yourself. My God, that does take work and effort. It doesn't happen on accident. We want to get to the outer path. Oh, that's in the exact opposite direction. She would. That would be a great costume. Talk about something that perfectly matches style with thematic value. Man, now I'm sad that outfit doesn't exist for her. I got the rest of the party, right? Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did everyone else. God damn it. Thank you, Grail. Too little, too late. I read the map too flippantly, clearly. Yeah, I guess it does make sense that it's past Magilu, as I'm thinking about it. Okay, it's out the North Watchtower, got it. We're a match made in heaven, Grail. You can't type, I can't speak, but we find our way through the stream together. I'm gonna chalk it up to it just being a Wednesday and it being a long week for this to be the middle of it, because yeah, I'm definitely feeling it too. I went the wrong way again. Son of a bitch. Okay, be brutally honest with me. Am I dyslexic about these maps, or is it something about the layout of areas in Berseria? Because I swear to you, most of the time in most games, I do not have this much issue with finding my way around, but I am clocking it as pretty consistent in Berseria so far. Okay, good. So maybe it's not me after all. I appreciate that, Grail. I just feel like when I'm looking at the levels of this map, like it goes from the first floor, then down to successive basement floors, but then we're back up to like higher levels and different areas that don't connect with one another. So I do just feel like this is, I expect a layout where each floor is broken down and stacked on top of each other sequentially, and that is not what this is. I think that's what's giving me such hard a time with it. Yeah, I think we're saying the exact same thing, Grail. Wonder why they did it that way. All right, we made it. No, shut up! Shut up!
you are, Eleanor. Kamoana's worried about you.
Not me. I would never be worried about you. It's that Kamoana kid. She won't shut up about it.
Looking for me?
Can't say no to a crying child.
Indeed. She may be a Therian now, but deep down, she's still a lonely little girl.
We're still talking about Kamoana, right?
I've come to realize in traveling with you all. Wretched demons and Therians, even the Malakim who I'd only thought of as tools, they all live and think as humanly as the rest of us. I was so clueless. I didn't know what demon blight really was, nor what the Abbey was doing. Through it all, I knew nothing beyond blind belief in whatever I was taught.
Ignorance is bliss, as they say.
The coward's path is not that of an exorcist. They may say, I didn't know anything, so I can't be blamed. I can't live like that. I think I'll stay here a little longer to cool my head off. Please tell Kamoana I'm all right.
Don't stay out too long. The sea breeze can get cold.
Thank you.
Don't get the wrong idea. If you got sick or something, Kamoana and Laphicet would worry. That's all.
I don't care about you, to be clear. Not one bit. But take this jacket. Oh, Grail, I'm sorry. Talk about a tragic ending. Oh, that's the worst, too, when you get your hopes up for a pizza and then it just doesn't happen. That's truly the worst. I don't envy you that, my friend. We're going through an adventure with literal demons and exorcists fighting for the fate of the world, and I still think that's the saddest thing to have happened this stream.
Something to say. There's something I've been hiding, until now. I've been on a special mission for Lord Artorias.
Confessions all around this stream.
I was to watch over the Malik Laphicet and bring him to Abbey headquarters. So vital was the mission. I was to do whatever it took, even kill my fellow exorcists.
Yeah, we all knew right away.
Gonna take me to them.
I'm sorry for deceiving you, Laphicet. Originally, I was going to get you to lower your guard, then take you in. However, I no longer intend on following the Abbey's orders.
You're turning your back on
Big F's for that pizza. Uncommon Grail L right here.
I believe in the sincerity of Lord Artorias. That the world he seeks is one that will benefit all humankind. But nevertheless, I simply cannot bring myself to condone the methods he has chosen to achieve that vision. So...
True that, Grail. True that.
I will help you protect the Therians. Until I discover the answer I seek.
Eleanor!
I want to live a life that I don't have to be ashamed of. And to do that, I have to learn the truth for myself.
We were talking a while ago, I forget who brought this up, and I wish I could credit them. It wasn't you, Grail, it was someone else, talking about the relationship between Saray and Eleanor in terms of just their disposition and the way they approach the world. It was Pink Moon Neko. That's who it was. Pink Moon Neko, missing you this stream. Hope to see you again soon, my friend. But I'm definitely getting huge echoes of Saray here right now with Eleanor arriving at the journey in a different way than Saray did, obviously, but having her same resolution be that she needs to figure out the answers for the life she wants to live and the meaning that she wants to see in the world herself. It's cool to see that, which is such a shepherd's journey in the last game, come up with someone who's in this very different group of characters. Different in some ways, maybe similar in others, in Berseria.
So, you live by your emotions after all. Maybe you found your own creed.
Welcome to our wonderful world of wickedness.
This is armatized Saray and Rose Grail because she has like the moral sensibilities and approach to the world that Saray does, but she is interjected into the party in the sort of antithetical way that Rose is, where Rose was the one with moral alignment that was outside the party's norm in Cisteria, and same thing with Eleanor in Berseria.
Don't equate us.
Oh, I missed Eisen's stance.
One's feelings is to act opposed to reason.
You never make things simple, do you?
Hey, Dino Slinky.
I don't.
Sorry to say we're just wrapping up in the next few minutes, but it's a pleasure to have you. Hope you come back if you like digging into the storytelling of JRPGs and the Tales games especially.
So, I think our next order of business is to find ourselves another Therian.
That's right, but we do it every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so if you want to kick off your weekend with some of it, we'll be back on Friday.
We had Eleanor swipe some intel on them from the Abbey. That could work. I don't know.
It wouldn't work.
Cheers, yeah, we'll hope to see you.
Still considers her a traitor, so who would leak anything to her?
Always looking forward to adding more like-minded gamers to our real-life JRPG party, so we'll keep an eye out.
Yeah. Besides, we can't put Laufeyset in danger like that. And anyway, Eleanor's terrible at being a spy.
Truly the worst.
I'm gracious, but accurate.
You know that special underground cell from yesterday? I want to go.
Oh, Grail.
There's something I want to try out.
The most touching warning I could imagine. What a note on which to wrap up the stream.
Laufeyset, I must offer you an apology.
What for?
For spying. I was plotting to take you back to the Abbey.
Truly, there are worse burdens to
It
bear.
was your mission, wasn't it? Somehow I think I always knew.
You did?
Call it a hunch. Besides, Velvet was really suspicious of you. Whenever you feel you're doing something wrong, you start to sweat a lot.
God, amen to that.
It seemed odd.
Or being able to eat cheese and then ordering a pizza and having it canceled on you after it was confirmed, which is what has happened to poor Grail in the earlier phases of the stream tonight. So, to each his own burden.
How long have you known?
Ever since you became a vessel for me. I think Velvet knew too.
That's quite a shock. I failed completely in my role as a spy. It's pathetic.
You're welcome, Grail.
Shameful, really.
Well, I think it says something good about you.
Huh?
Someone who can't lie well seems like a better person than someone who has an easy time of it.
Thank you, Laufeyset. I think you're the better person here.
Yeah, that's a really good catch, Grail. We still don't know what that orb is, right? That hasn't been resolved yet. I remember that now that you said it, but I don't think it's come back in the story since then. Chekhov's orb, that's what that is.
I wouldn't go that far.
What are you doing here, Bienfu?
We haven't seen this fella in a minute.
We're in the middle of something important. Please leave us be for now.
I'll be quiet. Just let me hang around, all right?
Afraid not.
Madame Eleanor is a mealyhead! She's a what?
Laufeyset, thank you. I hope we can stay friends.
I hope so too, Eleanor.
Oh, that's right. It's the orb that Artorias used to communicate with Eleanor. Is that right? That's coming back to me now that you say it. Yeah, that would be interesting if it was a work of subterfuge by Melchior and Artorias wasn't even in the loop. I wouldn't have had that thought.
Hey, Bienfu, I have a question for you. I know Magilou likes to call herself a witch and all that, but what is she really?
The obvious guess would be that she's an exorcist.
A common nickname, to be sure, Dino Slinky.
That's not surprising. She is indeed a bona fide dark witch. I should know. I saw one night just how scary she could be. It's enough to keep you awake at night. It was near the crater of a volcano. Above the bubbling magma sat a huge cauldron. Inside the cauldron, a blood-red liquid stickily simmered, boiling in the hellfire heat. When droplets splattered onto Miss Magilou's cheeks, she just cackled and licked it off, and she kept the cauldron boiling for 3 days and 3 nights. What was she making? Strawberry jam.
There's nothing scarier than
What's
that.
scary about that?
I was just getting to the scary part. Instead of using sugar, she put in soy sauce, cooking wine, and liquor.
Ugh.
Soy sauce and strawberries?
Is that a thing?
You wouldn't think so, but that contrasted sweetness, sourness, and saltiness actually makes it taste great. Not that someone like you would understand the appeal. You have to have a refined palate like mine to appreciate it.
Wait, I've heard of that. You can boil things in soy sauce and wine to preserve them. When you do it with strawberries, it's called strawberry soup.
That's right!
Actually, strawberry soup has sea urchin and abalone, not strawberries. It's just called that because the sea urchin plumps up like berries. And it's not preserved either.
Really? Well, I had no idea. Wow, I really liked it too. I wonder if the reason she's never made it for me again is because she realized the mix-up. Now that I think about it, that's not the only thing I like that she made one time. Like durian jellies and the candied sweet fish too.
I think I see what's going on here.
What does the food she's made more than once taste like?
Just the
It's
worst.
just normal stuff, like what you guys always have. Only a truly scary witch could hide that much cooking talent behind such plain-tasting food with no one the wiser.
Well, I'm not going to take your shameless Xenoblade bait, but I think yeah, it's good to have a game plan for just whatever your challenge would be, whatever we decide to stream next. I do feel like Grace's is a safe and healthy front runner right now, so good you already have one slotted in for that. But yeah, it would be fun as much as anything for me to hear some of the other challenges you come up with for some of the other ones, because I feel like, I mean, I don't totally have a beat on how you come up with the challenges, Grail, but I feel like having them designed in such a way that they sort of reflect the content and setup of the particular Tales games would be a really cool way to add some particularity to them. I'm thinking I'll just work through the skits we've got and then we'll call it a night for time. I can't imagine we have that many
I
left.
told him I'd never smelled it before, he put a little on my sleeve.
I say that and then we'll be here for like 20 more minutes.
Of the royal family's perfume. It's distinct, but not overpowering. It's made from Vandaria trees, conifers that grow in a snowy land.
I've noticed that you and Velvet and Mogiloo smell nice too.
Do you have others on tap, Grail, or is that the only one?
We do? We don't use that stuff, but maybe you're smelling the soap we use.
Oh, can only the royal family wear fragrant wood?
No. Some fragrances, including the Vandaria scented ones, only the royal family can use, but most don't have any such restriction.
If they all smell so good on humans, why doesn't everyone use them?
You know, I've never thought about that. Why do you think that is, Aizen?
It's a bit
Yeah, Vandaria, that's one of the two kingdoms,
I'd
right?
have to start with the history
Think?
of bathing in Midgand.
My man.
A few hundred years ago, people believed they would die if they took a bath. They were so terrified of baths that they wouldn't even go near one.
I can't believe people would be scared of taking a bath. Why would that even happen?
Well, at the time, a deadly plague was running rampant, and people thought that it could be transmitted through bathwater. Bear in mind that this was all before we had proper plumbing or techniques to purify water. People couldn't just bathe anywhere. Sewers like the one we used to sneak through Loegres are fairly recent.
Yeah, it's Gar's
construction,
kingdom
only
in
around
Destiny.
a century old.
Some people even thought bathing at all was unhygienic.
Right. As bathing went out of style, the royal family started to use these fragrant woods.
Covering up their bad smell with a good one.
Yep. As a result, their perfumes used to be far more potent, to the point where you couldn't even tell if it smelled good anymore. But nowadays, nobody actually believes that bathing can make you sick, right?
As civilization advanced, plumbing became widespread, and baths themselves became much cleaner fixtures
Okay.
than they used
Those
to
seem
be.
like reasonable challenges.
Fragrant woods fell out of favor because they were no longer necessary.
According to your special logic of what constitutes a reasonable challenge.
Prosperity, the perfumes became a popular display of wealth. The newfound popularity didn't last long, however, thanks to the propagation of a new disease. One that didn't transmit through baths.
Demon blight, you mean?
With the rise of demon attacks, life outside the city walls became increasingly difficult. With fragrant woods now harder to come by, the perfumes once again became the domain of royalty.
I guess that means that fragrant woods share a long and complicated history with plagues. To cover up the truth of malevolence, the powers that be spread rumors of a demon plague, continuing their time-honored tradition of covering up one stink with another.
So, what do you think of the perfume? Do you like it?
Yeah, it smells nice. But I think I like the smell of soap better.
Huh?
Alright, this has got to be the last one.
This island is so amazing! It's far away from any other people and has so much hidden stuff underground! It's such a perfect hideout! Just thinking about it makes me so excited to be here!
Yeah, I guess.
What's wrong? You were so excited to be here before! Don't be such a drag, Laphicet!
Yeah, I know what you mean about Grail. I almost feel like as you know, I'm working on a study of Destiny right now, and I'm not done working through my thoughts on it. And I really want to be able to see Destiny on its own terms, because I think it has a lot of great stuff to say that has stood the test of time, even for how old it is and kind of rudimentary in a lot of its gameplay systems and graphics and everything like that. But I do feel like Gar is the kind of character where if Destiny were a more modern Tales game, he would be more interesting, because I can see like all of the characters are more or less gestures as opposed to fleshed out in the way that we would expect characters to be in more modern Tales games, maybe with the exception of Mary, because kind of her whole character is that she has this deep buried past, and so there kind of has to be a little bit more there. But with Gar, I feel like it could be so interesting if there were a little more meat on the bone in terms of him being like him ascending to becoming a king in like the middle of the game, and him like getting his Swordian and called to like the mission that the rest of the Swordians have been trying to finish since the start of the game, only in the middle of the game. Like that kind of character in subsequent Tales games, I feel like has been much more developed and interesting. I guess you could even kind of think of a Dohalim type as that kind of character in very broad strokes. But I do feel like it's a bit too sketchy and unsubstantiated in Gar to really entice me in a similar way. I would imagine so. Yeah, I mean, I think the PS2 version was pretty much rebuilt and embellished in a lot of ways, so I wouldn't be surprised.
It's just that this used to be a prison. People were brought here to suffer.
If you're worried about how I feel, don't be. If I really hated this place, I wouldn't have made it my base.
Hell, I was imprisoned here too, but now it's the secret fort I always dreamed of.
I still haven't forgiven the guard who ate all those marron glacés I was sent.
I'll let the past be the past. What part of secret fort are you not getting?
Secret fort!
Yeah.
But it can't all be just for fun and games here either. In order to maximize the success of our future battles, we need to maintain and improve this base going forward.
This place seems sturdy as it is. Does it really need more work put into it?
Nonsense. This place was built to specialize in holding prisoners. We can make it better suit our needs.
What are you proposing exactly?
Well, I think we need to start with smokescreen generators. They'll be effective against intruders unfamiliar with the layout here. Of course, afterwards we'll have to clean up all the soot.
Boys will be boys.
No thanks.
I think
Gotta have our treehouse.
Fires. The fire at Helavis was really scary.
We have Malakim like you who could use water arts, though. If anything happens, you can just put it out.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true.
What we really need are some secret underground tunnels. If things get too hairy here, we'll need an underground escape route. We can put in hidden doors, and even some fake ones to trick the enemy too.
We have 2 separate docks. That's good enough.
No enemy is going to attack without taking both docks into consideration. That's why we need to build underground tunnels before anything else.
But we're on an island. You know, surrounded by water. Where would these tunnels even lead to?
Isn't it obvious? We'll dig underneath the sea to another uninhabited island nearby.
But there are no other islands nearby.
If it means getting my tunnels, I'll build an island too.
My man.
Are you listening to what you're saying?
It sounds like he's daydreaming to me.
I'll break down any wall that gets in the way of me building my tunnels.
Great opportunity we have here. You guys just don't get it.
It's okay. I get where you're coming from. But they'll never understand. You might as well save your breath.
We have to build an underground treehouse. All right. I joked that it would take 20 more minutes. It took 10, so half as much time, but also half as much time. I think that's as good a place as we're going to get to call it for the evening. Another delightful stream, bearing the many travails of the midweek blues between storms and pizza cancellations and fighting through the doldrums, but we made it. We probed a lot of great stuff. How cool to be able to return to places like Loegres and the newfound secret fort where so much of this began through very different eyes in a very different context. And to see characters like Velvet and Eleanor start to really reconceptualize themselves. I think we already talked about that as one of the payoffs of Act 2 in a lot of games and stories that are structured like this. And it's nice to see it start to come to fruition. And so quickly, too. I remember we ended the last stream on Monday on the note of most of the characters just coming to understand the true nature of the world. And notice, especially in a game so long, how quick the turnaround time is from them getting that kind of key insight, like the piece that had been missing, to them being more willing to reveal the piece that had been missing in terms of their own past to the rest of the party, between Velvet confessing she's a Therian, Eleanor confessing she was supposed to be a traitor, and using that confession as a means of hopefully developing new identities and new relationships going forward, all within the context and nestled within the motif, no pun intended, of why it is that birds fly, with an actual bird as a symbol. How about that? I said last time, I think we were setting up a lot of good adventures and decisive resolutions in the second act. This stream has definitely felt like payoff for that, and we have plenty more characters on the list here who are still looking for similar turning points. And I think now that we're getting a clearer sense, at least in some dimensions, of what's going on, they will more likely than not fall like dominoes. So I can't wait to dig into that on a Friday stream. It'll be good vibes and great content with which to kick off the weekend. We'll be doing it at the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. So hope to see you back. If you're watching on YouTube and interested in digging into the real life conversation and JRPG party here, strongly encourage you to do that. Would love to see you. Grail and Pottery, as always, my friends. So nice to have you hanging out and chatting. Always a pleasure. Dino Slinky, it was great to see you for the first time. I do hope you find your way back here, hopefully earlier next time. Always sorry, well, happy and sorry to see people show up at the end, because it's always great to see people, but I feel like we all miss out when they miss out on the opportunity to dig into the overall conversation with us. Also, Pizzicato, if you are lurking as you sometimes do or watching the VOD after the fact, I felt really, really bad that you were off of the recent chat at the end of the stream on Monday, and so I didn't catch the visual reminder to call you out, because I always try to call out everyone who's thoughtful and interested enough to not only jump into the stream, but also contribute in the chat. So shout out to another stalwart mainstay, Pizzicato 5, for joining in the conversation on Monday. It was fantastic to have you. Hope to see you back as well. And Grail is forging on ahead. So I am proud of you. Don't burn yourself out, my friend, because we've got a lot of Berseria to go, and you all the more so for managing your challenge run on top of everything else. On top of managing the loss of a pizza. I do hope you figure out some other good food for yourself. If the Tales games teach us nothing else, it's that sustenance is important. How much of this game has been about devouring and skits about the food that Magilu does and doesn't cook, and everything in between. All right, my friends, I hope you game well, think well, enjoy some stories, reflect on what this game is trying to say about the challenges of the world, what it means to find your way in it. So many of the Tales games, if not all of them, at the end of the day, boil down to some version of or perspective on those questions, and giving you an experience through which to think about your own answers to them in a certain way, where no journey through any two Tales games nor any two playthroughs of one Tales game are quite alike, and that's so magical. So it's been a pleasure to be digging into that with you on Tales of Praxis. We got plenty more good times ahead, probative times ahead, hopefully rewarding and fulfilling times ahead. Until then, be well, and I'll see you again on Friday. Cheers, everybody.